24 to 48 hours are something that will take place for the testing as they are looking for their loved ones. Let me quickly show you these visuals from the civil hospital here in Ahmedabad as the family members have come, and they are not going anywhere. They say that until and unless we do not get any concrete information, we will not move out from this location in anticipation of if they can get some information about whether the doctors who were called in and who are living at the hostel area, or they are still hoping that the family members at the Air India crash would have been survived, but we all know for the fact that Air India has given them official information. These are people sitting just outside the BJ Medical College, Kasauti Bhavan, where family members have been called into.
Right.
Yes. Now let's quickly move on now to some other news, and what we can focus on at this juncture is to give you certain crash theories. What exactly did result in this? Remember, the flight data recorder and the cockpit voice recorder have now been found, and hopefully in a finite period of time we will know what exactly took place. But let's play out a couple of scenarios. The first scenario, immediately after rotation, in other words, the moment the plane gets into the sky, a single engine failure or a bird strike potentially occurs, drastically increasing the cockpit workload for the pilots. The crew focused on the engine issue may have mistakenly not retracted or brought up the landing gear. That's a standard procedure post takeoff to aid climb performance. While troubleshooting in the cockpit, the plane could have slowed below the minimum speed required to maintain control, with one engine out, leading to a stall that resulted in the crash. At about 400 feet, recovery from a stall when the aircraft was not climbing is nearly impossible. The second scenario, an extremely rare dual engine failure occurs shortly after takeoff, rendering the plane a glider with no thrust. Without engine power, the crew couldn't retract the landing gear, and the resulting drag caused a rapid loss of airspeed, leading to a stall. At such a low altitude, no time to run the dual engine failure checklist or attempt an engine restart. There was no time, the crash taking place. Scenario number 3, video evidence suggests that the flaps on the aircraft, this is where the flaps in the aircraft are, but in this particular grab of the actual aircraft, it suggests that there was something potentially unusual. Video evidence suggests the flaps were retracted, which is unusual since flaps are always extended during takeoff to provide extra lift at low speeds. If a pilot mistakenly retracted the flaps instead of the landing gear during a high workload situation in the cockpit, such as an engine failure, hypothetically, it could have significantly reduced lift, especially with only one engine operational, potentially causing a stall. A fourth scenario, during an engine failure at 400 feet, the crew mistakenly shuts down the operational engine instead of the failed one. Now, that is a known error in aviation history. I would like to say at this low altitude, there would, if this took place, no time to restart the engine, leading to a loss of thrust and control. The conclusion over here, regardless of the specific cause, the crash likely stemmed from a sudden loss of thrust and the subsequent handling of the aircraft under critical conditions. This is conjecture, but this is what the pilot community is talking about. The flight data recorder and the cockpit voice recorder, part of the black box, have been located, and we'll get the data soon.
Many possibilities there. Thank you, Vishnu, for joining us. Also joining us now is Jitendra Bhargav, former Executive Director of Air India. We also have Professor Aditya Paranspe, who is an aerospace expert, and he teaches at Monash University. Thank you both of you for joining me on this broadcast. Mr. Bhargav, I was listening to you yesterday, and you made several points on the various possibilities and what really this means for Air India and Boeing. But now that the black box has been found, sir, what can we expect in the investigation? How will it proceed? And how are the agencies likely to sort of work on this together?
Black box had been
okay. Let's go to Professor Paranspe now. Paranspe, Aditya, you'll also, you were talking about how there is this question of, the presence of double engines there, and also if there was adequate amount of thrust, power, lift that could have played an important role in what really happened. 24 hours later, what do you think could be the primary possibility of what really went wrong?
Okay, so I think we have to make a distinction between lift and thrust. In purely technical terms, lift is what helps you keep a certain amount of weight in the air, and thrust is what lets you maintain enough flight speed to keep that weight in the air. I suppose my own assessment so far is largely unchanged. I still think there was reduced thrust on both engines. There is maybe some early evidence to suggest that based purely on the visuals. There was, at least prima facie, no evidence to show that the airplane stalled. I don't think that evidence exists, although as we look at the data from the flight data recorder, that may change. When stalls happen, airplanes tend to drop really quite rapidly. We're looking at the planes having a vertical speed in the range of several thousands of feet per minute. In contrast, if data from the site flight radar 24 is to be believed, they seem to have predicted a descent rate of just over 400 feet per minute once the engines were out. And that is not consistent with stall to the best of my knowledge. What that is consistent with, however, is substantially reduced thrust on both engines and potentially a dual engine out. So that assessment hasn't changed. It's of course provisional, pending the availability of data from the flight data recorder.
Mr. Paranspe, also, what does this mean for Air India? This is, of course, a setback to the company. And what does this mean for Boeing as a company? Because this is a company that's already been under scrutiny, but this is also a part of the fleet that was considered amongst the safest. What does this, mean for these two companies and the fact that Indians had started looking at air travel with a lot of promise and hope? Where does that put us now? Okay, Mr. Bhargav is back with us. Let me take a question with him. Mr. Bhargav, now that the black box has been found, sir, and Civil Aviation Minister Ram Mohan Naidu has also said that this has happened in 28 hours, how critical is this discovery and what happens next?
See, at the moment, people can speculate and say this was a possible cause of accident that took place yesterday. But what the black box does is to prove and establish conclusively as to what is the cause. Since this black box records virtually everything, the altitude, the speed, the conversation that may have taken place between the pilot and the co-pilot, or with the ATC, etc., everything gets recorded. Take, for example, the pilot did know what is going wrong with it, and he told the co-pilot, I'm trying to do this to salvage, to fly, to go climb faster and all those kind of things, and then he couldn't do it. So if you get these kind of clues available, much easier. The time span may be less, but you need to get the facts out. So this device is put in the aircraft primarily for this reason, and this recorded thing, whether it's in a fire environment, whether it's on a hard landing, you name it, but this black box survives for as long as 1 year. So you are able to decode it, and it will be decoded by Boeing, will be there, India's regulatory agency, the Air Accident Bureau that we have, the Air India airline, and you get the hard data. So there'll be no room left for speculation as to what was possibly the cause of this accident. Because ultimately, Boeing as a manufacturer is interested in knowing. Air India as an airline involved in accident is also interested in knowing. So let's hope, and the families of people who perished in this flight also want to know as to what caused the accident.
Mr.
So the finding of this black box,
before I go to Professor Paranspe,
Mr. Bhargav, is a major step.
Right. Mr. Bhargav, we're all reading about the pilots here, and the pilot, Sumit Sabharwal, was also a very senior, experienced pilot. Does this also mean that whatever happened was beyond somebody who was really experienced in this art?
It's not a question of experience and finding it out. I would go by hard facts. Because nobody would, I would hate to blame whether it's the airline or the Boeing manufacturer or anybody, because let's repeat the facts. Dreamliner, irrespective of the kind of controversies it went through the initial phase, has had a safety track record that is second to none. This is the first instance of a Dreamliner aircraft being involved in an accident. Pilots, the commander had 8,000 plus hours of flying experience. What do you do about it? And pilots are trained on simulator for virtually every conceivable situation. But here, as we found, takeoff to the crash, matter of minutes. Why it happened? Because visibility is not a factor. Weather was fine. Everything, the aircraft has a good track record. Pilot has a good track record. Now the question is, the accident did take place. So what was the reason for it? And that is where the black box will come in very handy for it to be decoded, data available, juxtaposed with previous kind of accident report, and a report conclusively established that this was the possible reason why this aircraft crashed, for remedial measures to be taken.
Thank you, Mr. Bhargav, and do stay with us also, Professor Paranspe, do stay with us. The scale of the tragedy that we're talking about, the plane crash in Ahmedabad, something that's unfolding and something that the country is witnessing is massive, and one cannot really stop thinking about not just lives of those that are lost in the aircraft, but also of those who were present at the mess where the plane crashed. Now, 250 lives lost, in fact, over 250 lives lost, and several families now in mourning. Let's get you some reactions from family members and those related to victims here.
हमारे साथ डॉक्टर नवीन हैं और जिनके ब्रदर इन लॉ फ्लाइट पे थे और उनका 8 महीने का जो बच्चा है उसने सैंपल दिया है, उनको ये लेके आए थे। क्या कैसे आपको पता चला और क्या ये पूरा हादसा हुआ, जरा अगर बताना चाहेंगे?
सर, हमको तो न्यूज़ के थ्रू ही पता लगा इस हादसे के बारे में, और बस बाकी तो सबको पता ही है सर, जो हुआ वो।
नहीं, जैसे कि आप बता रहे हैं उनकी वाइफ और बच्चे यहाँ थे, वो आगे गए, इस तरीके की बात समझ में आ रही है?
जी सर, वो उनकी फ़्लाइट अगले हफ्ते थी और वो इस हफ्ते उनका मतलब जाने का था, उनके हस्बैंड का। तो बस यहाँ ड्रॉप करने आए हम और विद इन फ्यू मिनट्स पता लगा कि ये हादसा हुआ।
उनका नाम बताएंगे?
मोहम्मद अदनान।
मोहम्मद अदनान जी पहले जाने वाले थे, उसके बाद वाइफ और बच्चा जाने वाला था और आपने उन्हें ड्रॉप किया था?
मैं मतलब फैमिली वाले आए थे ड्रॉप करने।
Professor Paranspe, one thing that everyone seems to be really curious about is how did the aircraft lose altitude so rapidly? And there's this flight data that also shows that the plane lost signal at just 625 feet. What really could have happened? Was the takeoff, wrong, or in the sense, was there a problem after that? And also about the configurations that people have been talking about. What is it that you pick up from what you saw?
So going purely on the video now, it's a little speculative. So I hope my fellow collaborator engages me a little more here and just entertains it. First off, the fact that the plane took off. These planes typically take off at speeds between 150 and 160 knots. And again, from flight radar 24, we see that the plane got to a barometric altitude of about 625 feet, which is about 400 odd feet above the ground level. And at that point, the flight speed was about 170 knots. So the plane accelerated, it gained altitude, which means at the time of liftoff, most likely there was adequate thrust and the airplane was configured correctly in terms of the flap settings and such. Otherwise, the plane would not have been able to lift off the ground. Now, after that, in the second part of this flight, where we probably had an engine failure, most likely dual, because there's a good reason to believe it wasn't a single engine failure, just looking at the rudder on the way on, when the plane starts to go down. Based on the fact that we had a dual engine failure, the airplane starts to descend at around 475 feet per minute. This is probably a little more consistent with a glide or a powered glide as compared to a stall. So that is the segment that makes me believe that we have a case of engine failure. It's not a stall. It doesn't look like there was any issue with the flaps. So I probably wouldn't worry too much about it. Of course, as my colleague said, from Air India, we will obviously get the black box in our hands soon. And hopefully we'll be able to find out what actually went wrong. But at this point, purely as a matter of conjecture, it looks like a case of engine out. Now, as to why the engines went out or why they idled when they shouldn't have, That is very difficult to tell based purely on the videos, because the videos just show you the motion of the airplane, and that motion can let you talk a little more with some amount of certainty about the forces on the airplane. They can't let you talk about the systems. So if we did have engine out problems, it's very hard to say why the engines went out. Engines can go out for a number of reasons. You can have compressor surge, you can have engine flame out, you can have choked fuel lines, you can have problems with the pumps that feed fuel into the engine, any number of possibilities. But it's only when we look at the flight data recorder that we'll be able to tell exactly which of these went wrong. It's not possible to speculate intelligently about it based purely on the videos.
Right. Stay with us, Professor Paranspe. Also, Mr. Bhargav. We are joined by Tripti Soni now. Tripti Soni is somebody who lost her brother Swapnil Soni and her two sisters-in-law in the tragedy that happened yesterday. Her sisters-in-law Yoga Soni and Alpa Soni also died in that tragic air crash yesterday. Thank you, Tripti, for speaking to us at a time like this. NDTV stands with you at this hour of grief. You lost your younger brother and two sisters-in-law in this tragedy. Can you tell us a little bit about when was the last time you spoke to them, and when did you get to know about this crash?
I lost my younger brother Swapnil and my bhabhi Yoga and my elder bhabhi. And last I spoke to them when they were on their route to airport. They were very excited to go to London. They were to receive my elder brother there, who was on the road trip from Ahmedabad to London since last 2.5 months. He was driving 22,000 kilometers, 22 countries crossing, and he was to reach London. So these people were going to receive him in London. So they were quite excited, and unfortunately, they couldn't meet.
So Tripti, it is in some ways so ironic that it should have been interesting at this point of time. There could have been a celebration at your house. Your eldest brother has accomplished this challenge of a road trip to London that you're talking about. How is the family coping with this tragedy?
We are a big joint family. We all are close together. But first, the news was quite devastating. And first, our reaction that, that passengers, since we are told that passengers were being carried to, civil hospitals. So we were hoping that our, people would be there among those injured people only. But then at the end of the day, we lost all the hope, and we were told that, nobody survived. And it was so greatly shocking for all of us.
I know this is a difficult time for you. Tell us a little bit about your brother, your bhabis. Yours seems to be a deeply close-knit family. What is it that you remember about them the most, or you would miss about them the most?
My younger brother was a very bright chap. He was a managing director of a big company called IRM Offshore. And he had just assumed his managing directorship 3 months ago. And he was quite promising entrepreneur. My bhabhi was also a very creative person. Both the bhabis were a very creative person. And, it's a great loss, not just to the family, but for our company as well. And he was absolutely, brilliant chap at the age of 45. I have no words to say.
We're very sorry for your loss, Tripti. Also, your brother's children and your parents. How are the young people and the older members of the family coping with this?
Yeah, this brother is survived by two sons. One is 18 years and one is 8 years old, and we are taking care of them.
Right. Going back to our guest, thank you, Tripti Soni, for speaking to us at a time like this. Mr. Bhargav, you just heard one of the relatives of the victims here. You've been in this industry for such a long time, sir. When do you last remember something so tragic like this happening in this country?
Let me put it this way. Air India has not had this accident as long as I was with Air India. But I've personally gone through a train accident. So I can relate myself to what these people have been going through and what the loss means to them. I was a lucky survivor. It's a different matter at that time. But when you look at it, the painful, everybody has a story, painful story on what happened. Because imagine the people who had come to see off their relatives. They would have hardly gone some distance away when they heard the news about the accident. And then, of course, yesterday, nobody had come forth to say, look, people have perished, so many. We only knew about one survivor, but nobody had put a firm kind of a thing that, look, people have perished. It's only now when the people are getting on to it, the DNA tests being conducted because of the fire. Of course, everybody knew it, that the chances of survival were remote. But then one is always hopeful. And that even I was. But till today, when we started getting those figures, that we are talking of 241 people having perished in the air crash and 24 people in the ground, making a tally of 265. Simply unbelievable. Simply can't look at it and say what kind of a thing has happened suddenly of it. And when you look back here, aircraft, good, visibility there, pilot here, but what is it that happened? And that is why when these news broke that the black box has been discovered and the process will begin in right earnest, that one said, okay, let's hope facts come out and people can really know what really happened. Because fortunate part is the government has taken cognizance of it and they have issued certain directions that let for these aircraft Dreamliner flight operated flights, additional checks be conducted. Probably this may be a confidence booster, will infuse confidence in the traveling public that aircraft per se had no fault, but we are trying to find out the reality, what happened for it. But in the meantime, additional checks are being introduced.
Mr. Bhargav, do stay with us. Let me also get you more reactions from families. Remember, this is a difficult time for them. There's also the story of a daughter from Gujarat who left for London yesterday. In fact, she was to reach London today. Kinal Mistry has died in the crash. Her father spoke to NDTV, and there's also a last video of Kinal Mistry waving goodbye to her parents. And she was in India for medical treatment. Her father spoke to NDTV, and this is what he said.
आपने अभी डीएनए सैंपल दिया है, कौन था आपका फ्लाइट में?
मेरी डॉटर थी।
क्या नाम है उनका?
किनल मिस्त्री।
क्या बताया जा रहा है और कहाँ जा रहे थे, कुछ अगर शेयर कर पाएंगे?
वो आनंद से लंदन जा रही थी, अहमदाबाद से लंदन।
अच्छा, अहमदाबाद आनंद से आए थे आप आनंद से?
आनंद से।
अच्छा, क्यों क्या मकसद से जा रहे थे, कुछ बता पाएंगे?
वो उधर ही रहती थी, लंदन 1 साल से थी वो।
अच्छा।
वो वर्क परमिट में गई थी, उधर ही रहती थी और उसका अगले साल एक्सीडेंट हो गया था इंडिया में ही। फिर उसका वर्क परमिट था, उसको जाना ही पड़ता था, तो उसका ट्रीटमेंट पूरा नहीं हुआ था, तो ये ट्रीटमेंट के लिए वापस आई थी। उसका 7 या 8 टीथ निकल गया था। अच्छा। तो इम्प्लांट करवाया, तो पूरा दांत उसका नया लगवाया था।
क्या बता रहे हैं कुछ? अभी आपने सैंपल दिया है?
या 3 दिन लगेगा ऐसा बोले, 72 घंटा लगेगा।
तो खाली वो थे, मतलब मैरिड थी, किस तरीके का?
तो आप मैरिड की रजिस्टर करके गई थी। मैरिज तो उसका अगले साल करने का था, मैरिज नहीं हुआ था, मैरिज करने का था अगले साल।
So heartbreaking visuals and voices of families who are mourning their dead. Aditya Paranjpe, there's a very basic question that I want to ask you for viewers who are just tuning in now. Could the crash have been prevented? And if yes, what should we have done? And what is needed to be done in future?
Yeah, at this point, there is no good answer. We'll only know after we look at the data from the flight data recorder. Look, if I can just tell the viewers a little bit about what might transpire after this, now that we have the FDR and the CVR, they'll try and carry out what is called as a root cause analysis. So they'll try and trace back the errors to whether it's some human pilot error or whether it's a problem with the design, with the maintenance, with the operation, with loading or any such thing. At this point, it's not clear what has happened. And if they do identify, so there are two things they can identify. It could be a random error where nothing much really can be done. Or they could identify a specific lapse in the procedure, at which point they'll have to go back and re-emphasize the value of that specific procedure. If something is found wanting in the SOPs, those will probably be rewritten. So the whole idea of this exercise of looking at the FDR and the CVR is really to understand, is something missing in our procedure? Is something wrong with the design? And how best can these be fixed? Having said that, I want to add this caveat that at this point, just having seen the visuals, it's not clear where the problem seems to have occurred. So some of it is speculative really, but once you look at the data from the FDR and the CVR, we'll hopefully be able to trace it back to its root cause. And if there are any lessons to be learned, we'll hopefully learn them. We'll improve our SOPs, and that's the way we do justice to the people who died in this crash and on the ground.
Right. Also, Professor, how important are these pre-flight checks, checking for readiness of staff members, also the communication with the ATC systems, also the emergency response protocols? How important are these? Do you think that there could have been lapses on that front as well?
So, okay, so all of these are absolutely critical. Given how safety critical aviation generally is, we tend to leave nothing to chance. There's literally an SOP for everything, right from the way in which the airplane is loaded, to the amount of fuel that's put on board, to the way the engine is configured prior to takeoff based on the maximum takeoff weight and the ambient conditions, to the exact procedure that the pilots follow from the time the airplane is pushed back. So this sector is heavily procedure driven, and the more experienced a pilot is, the better aware they are of these procedures. As Mr. Bhargav also pointed out earlier, pilots are trained to handle a large range of contingencies. There I could add that even if there had been, for example, a one engine out situation, pilots are trained to keep the airplane flying with one engine and then come back and carry out a safe landing. That's how the airplanes are configured. However, if something's happened which was completely unexpected, completely unsalvageable, then it could have done either. Now, Air India, in our limited knowledge, has had an impeccable record when it comes to maintenance, safety, and operations. So we have to bear that in mind, and we then have to look at the fact that something extremely unusual has happened here. So it might just be an unfortunate set of circumstances, random circumstances that really had nothing to do with any procedural lapse. That's also a possibility that we have to be open to.
Right. Dr. Aditya, there's also a lot that's being talked about this lone survivor, and there are many questions regarding his miraculous escape. And, people have reached out to him, also say that, he himself is not able to talk about, it's understandable that he's gone through this tragedy and he's also injured. What do you think would have really, it's easy to say, it's easy to call it a miracle, and it possibly is, but what do you think could have happened? What really do you think would have helped him?
There is no reason to believe anything in particular. Look, he was sitting in seat 11A, which is by the window. If I remember the seat number correctly, it's the exit row window by the door. So if at all there was an impact on the left-hand side of the airplane, he's bang in there to receive it. Nobody else survived, apparently, this crash, which means everybody in the same row as him, people right behind him, they all perished. So we may not have to call it a miracle, but it could just be a set of chance events that led to him surviving this. Occasionally, people who survive accidents of this sort, where a lot of others are killed, suffer from something known as survivor's guilt. And I genuinely hope that this person does not. He's got a second chance at a life, and wish him the best and hope he makes the most of it. But really, such survival cases are really random events, and these have to be appreciated. We can't explain these, but these really need to be appreciated.
Very well said. Do stay with us, Professor Paranjpe. Gitanjali Nangtoi is the sister of a crew member who lost her life in the tragedy that happened yesterday. In fact, she also spoke about, she gave an interview in 2023 last week of February, and she joined in April 2023 is what Gitanjali talked about her sister. And she said that, it is very difficult for the family to believe that her sister is no longer alive. And she also said that it was her first job, and she cracked the Air India interview, and it was a dream to become an air hostess. And because of an internet ban in the state of Manipur, the family could not video chat as they would love to, but she had messaged the sister when she was in school, informing that she would be flying to London on that day, but then she became unreachable. Let's listen into that conversation.
My interview sa 23 February ni last week lang interview ni ba aduga joining na April na to boy the April date fixed ay high pang ikaw ay high pang kamjo aduga adudagi join to rin na mas aduga pass na ba mas 12 loiraga DM commerce da first sem exam piramaga first try shuma je ai try tawge sikata habne ba ade ha aviation ko to anda iskeno satte ba sinda chatte ba adu interview of look in haraga adu first try da mark le da ko net thingdrei mamang da koi pa sik inau se koi layer me ba adu video call da mandi question adu matung di phone call su duga ai sabli ka taw tre ba adu ga ngasi message thar ko se mana ai London chatui ne ngasi du loi call taw su chaloi ko le na chadi da tin ma halakani hai ba adu okay di ko ne ja ka na founder se habde ki kem haina ki drive ba ni se adu ga sigi pau na khoi dom cha mana pau pa le khoi din ya ba ni na smaina e bi da thagal le yar india ki ten ma kan to wenga thoi ten no karam ba non hai ba na ma ki yar india ni hai ana ma di London ne ma ai wona sa mi ha ba chatu ju to e ma ro te London ni hai ba ma khat na khoi ma se pau lo na ba ne ba ma ki roommate ke ai number shin gi ba ki number lai ta ba mama na ba ni phone to ba ni ai di Mumbai dagi pare na kai di pare no khang da be kan tham oi ha ko di si pau ne ba ado sa de media to sam la me ya na ba ta ho be ko ju ado se company ga khoi no pi ka tora pau phung na ba da mo khoi su kriu gi na to nga na pe na to nga na su hai dai na ado mai ha da mama na bin su ju phone to ro pa da company de ai gi number di pi gre phone to mi di hai ju ju mau to ro pe ba ko ado mai gi phone ju ba ring chat le ba message sa ba de ka to we du ga ma gi net su phone to we ado
The families of victims quite shaken there. Aditya Paranspe, this is also the first fatal crash of a Boeing 787. What kind of implications does this have for Boeing's safety records, and also the fact that it was seen as one of the safest aircrafts, the Dreamliner? And what does this mean for the need for maintenance and also Air India's operational oversight?
Okay, so I'm not really an expert to comment on that, but let me still give it a go. So we talked earlier about the root cause analysis that's going to happen now that we have the FTR and the CVR. So the implications for both Boeing and Air India really depend on the outcomes of that root cause analysis. If it's traced back to something in the design, it's something that Boeing's going to have to fix if it's traced back to design. Let's also be aware that some of these problems happen because of issues with the operations that are so niche, it's very difficult to predict them ahead of time. And those are lessons that as a respectable OEM, Boeing will obviously learn. If the root cause analysis finds issues with any of the SOPs or anything to do with maintenance, then that's for Air India to decide how best they're going to handle it. I think the important thing to bear in mind is that both of these companies have had a fairly respectable record over the years. The Boeing 787 has been, they recently flew their billionth passenger over, I believe, some 5 million hours or so without incident. So clearly it's a fairly safe plane. However, one point that I must emphasize here is that in engineering, we talk about reliability, and reliability is always quantified in terms of the probability of failure. Even things that are fail-safe technically carry an extremely small probability of failure, and those are random events that can happen. The second thing I should also point out is that there is a general saying in the aviation world that no accident happens because of a single factor. It's very rare. Instead, you have a chain of contributing factors. So what will have to be identified with this crash was, what chain was this? Were there multiple contributing factors, each of which perhaps small in its own right, that contributed to this? Or was this a chance event, Murphy's law in action, that contributed to the crash? I think that's where we really need the FTR and the CVR to tell us what happened.
Right, that's a very important point. Also, let me also tell you the story of Bhumi Chauhan, a resident of Gujarat's Bharuch, who missed yesterday's flight AI 171, which crashed and 241 people on board died, including crew members, and lost their lives. But Bhumi Chauhan missed the flight because she was stuck in a traffic jam, and that really turned out to be a lifesaver. She spoke today, and this is what she said.
मेरी फ़्लाइट का टाइम था 1:10 का, तो हमें पहुंचते थोड़ा 12:20 हो चुकी थी और 12:10 को एयर इंडिया वालों ने चेक इन और सब कुछ करना बंद कर दिया था। अहमदाबाद का थोड़ा ट्रैफिक, हम लोग ये सिटी एरिया में थोड़ा एंटर हो चुके थे, तो उस वजह से थोड़ा हमको लेट हुआ था। और एट द टाइम आई वॉज फीलिंग टोटली नम, एंड एक एक तरह से अच्छा मैं अपने भगवान का थोड़ा माता जी का और सब शुक्रिया कर रही थी कि मैं बच गई, लेकिन दूसरी साइड ये भी था कि ये जो इंसिडेंट हुआ है वो बहुत ही थोड़ा टेरिफाइड है।
Well, NDTV stands with the families that have lost their loved ones in this horrible air crash. It's time for a short break. We'll be back in just a bit.
That's huge. That is a biggie. It's out there.
Gold Plus Clear Glass. Far ho ya near, sab kuch dikhe clear.
Air India plane crash in Ahmedabad. India's latest aviation disaster. India responds to the tragedy. Facts first, 100% ground reports.
Under this is the tail,
Here, and this is just one of the buildings that will give you an idea of the quantum of loss.
24 to 48 hours is the deadline that has been given for the DNA testing.
Maximum reporters, maximum coverage on NDTV. If it matters to you, if it matters to you, if it matters to you, it matters to India, it matters to India, it matters to India, and it matters to me, and it matters to me.
India Matters with Shivaru. Only on NDTV 24/7.
Why was there a hurry? Was it the government that was in a hurry?
I don't want to blame anyone.
Joining us today here in the NDTV newsroom.
Government cannot walk away from this responsibility.
Cricket is region of sort in this country.
Would you like to comment on what happened?
What is the condition of the injured at this point? How many people died?
What exactly happened? You have lost your daughter.
गोल्ड प्लस ऑप्टिमिस्टिक रिफ्लेक्टिव ग्लास लगाओ, धूप की गर्मी को दूर भगाओ और बिजली का बिल भी बचाओ।
In the wake of Pahalgam, all eyes on the Amarnath Yatra. Amidst fear, faith and fortitude. India's biggest fight against terror. NDTV reports on the holy route, the Amarnath spirit.
The markets move fast.
And so should your portfolio. Expert insights, real-time stock picks.
Do I buy Ola?
Should I hold CDSL for the long term?
Buy, sell or hold.
The answers you need, straight from the experts.
Callers from India and across the world. Connect live, ask, decide and invest wisely.
Your portfolio, your future. Ask Profit. Is your business future ready? Join the 13-week.
Well, India witnessed one of its darkest days in aviation history yesterday. Air India Flight 171, a Boeing 787 Dreamliner en route from Ahmedabad to London, crashed shortly after takeoff, claiming the lives of 294 people, 241 on board and at least 53 on the ground. Now, this tragedy not only marks the deadliest aviation disaster of the 2020s, but also the first fatal crash involving a Dreamliner since its introduction in 2011. We are getting you all details from the ground. My colleague Ankit joins us from Ahmedabad. Ankit, a variety of things have happened today, from the Prime Minister's visit to the National Investigation Agency going there, several teams going to landing in Ahmedabad to analyze what really happened, and most importantly, the discovery, the finding of the black box. Take us through the importance of black box. What does that mean for the investigation? Are we one step closer to reconstructing what really went wrong?
Well, the most significant part of this investigation, of course, was the recovery of the black box, which happened after 28 hours of continuous search by AAIB officials. As we've been talking since morning, Vasudha, let me very quickly also tell you that the black box was found at the rooftop, which we were showing you earlier. I have changed my location. I'm at the hospital at this moment, but very quickly, it was on the same rooftop that we saw a lot of activity. And then, of course, after 28 hours, the black box was found there. Now, the recovery is significant because it has very important data in it, which will be analyzed, and then there will be other investigations which will determine what exactly happened to this Dreamliner, which was unable to take that lift off, unable to take that thrust while it was on its takeoff, in fact, a sequence. Now, the black box not only just records the conversation between the pilots from the cockpit and the ATC, it also has about more than 1,000 parameters, mechanical, various parameters on which it records the performance of the entire aircraft. That becomes crucial to determine whether it was a pilot error or something went wrong mechanically as far as this aircraft is concerned. Then other factors come into play, like the way the plane landed, where it broke, the engine. All those things are going to be analyzed to first see whether there is an immediate need for other 787 Dreamliners to be grounded and to be checked and that thing to be rectified, or there was something specifically that went wrong with this aircraft. All those things will be checked because remember, the 787 Dreamliner is used across many countries, across many airlines as well. Now, apart from that, once the recovery of the black box is done, today there has been a green signal which has been given to remove the debris from that entire area of the BJ Medical College undergraduate, the junior doctors, hostel and mess, where, at least as far as the Medical Association is concerned, 4 MBBS students and 6 relatives, those who are visiting, have also died. So now the importance would be to clear that site, all that wreckage would be taken, and then, of course, a big exercise to reconstruct will begin.
Right. Thank you, Ankit, for joining us with those details. Like you rightly said, the most significant aspect of today's several teams landing in Ahmedabad is also discovery of the black box, which will play a critical role in reconstructing what really went wrong. With that, it's time for a short break. More news and updates on the other side.
तू ही तो है जिसकी सच्चाई वाली क्लैरिटी की वजह से मैं आज यहाँ हूँ।
गोल्ड प्लस सिल्वॉक्सी मिरर्स, ऐसी क्लैरिटी कि आपको सिर्फ सच नजर आए, चाहे कितने भी साल बीत जाएं।
How often have you turned away from debates that descend into endless fights? We bring you a show where every question is answered, where every debate finds its resolution, where every story finds its conclusion, where opinions collide but facts prevail, where stories unfold with insights and trust. When the noise ends, the last word begins.
If it matters to you, if it matters to you, if it matters to you, it matters to India, it matters to India, and it matters to me, and it matters to me.
India Matters with Shivaru, only on NDTV 24/7.
I've been reporting on all issues big and small from Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, rest of South India
bringing you all the action, all that you need to know, all that you want to know.
The energy of Maximum City is infectious. I'm bringing that energy in our news coverage from financial capital Mumbai.
Covering from the southernmost part of India over the last 23 years, I bring in-depth and 360-degree coverage from the Dravidian heartland.
The land of Mishti, also known for its bitter politics. I have seen much water flow under the Howrah Bridge, covering Bengal in all its vivid colors.
India's IT capital is always bustling, a city full of startups, stories and surprises. And I keep you ahead on all the Bengaluru buzz.
In today's interconnected world, India's voice is more crucial than ever. When India speaks, the world listens. At NDTV World, we are that voice, bringing you intelligent and insightful news from India and beyond. From geopolitics and diplomacy to economic shifts, migrations, tech disruptions, and the stories of our diaspora. We cover the news that shapes our global future. NDTV World, your new home for global news is here.
मैं नरेंद्र दामोदर दास मोदी ईश्वर की शपथ लेता हूं कि एनडीए सरकार में हम
निकला तो मैंने देखा कि आवाज जोर से आवाज आया विंग्स का, फिर पूरा धुआं भर गया।
मेरे खुद को भी बिलीव नहीं होता कि मैं कैसे उसमें से जिंदा बाहर निकला।
A disaster that has shocked the entire country, a disaster, a tragedy that has the entire world glued to their television screen. 241 people on the aircraft have lost their lives, just one lone survivor on seat 11A. A massive wide-bodied aircraft, Boeing 787 Dreamliner, dropped to the ground in a fireball in just a matter of 32 seconds, a minuscule half a minute that it took for so many families and lives to be destroyed forever. We're going to be understanding, with the help of this passenger jet simulation, what could have gone wrong with this particular aircraft, what could have led to this particular crash. Today with us we have Pushkar Shailar, who's a trained commercial pilot. Pushkar, let's go on to the passenger jet simulation and try and understand how an aircraft really works, what could have gone wrong with this particular aircraft. Pushkar, first things first, I just wanted to begin by asking you, what do you think could have gone wrong? What are the technical difficulties that the pilot might have encountered on this particular aircraft?
See, first of all, I will not make any speculations on this until the report is out. The investigation is still being done, right? So there's no report that's coming out. But what are the possibilities, right? There are multiple possibilities. Could be some technical fault, right? Could be complete power loss, right? Or could be some bird activity. But we really cannot say that this is the reason that happened until the investigation is out.
Absolutely. There's a probe that we're waiting by for more details on what really could have transpired in the span of those 32 seconds. But we're talking about half a minute here. And in just a span of half a minute, you did have that entire aircraft. It's a very massive, wide-bodied aircraft that crashed into the ground, dropped to a fireball. We just want to understand if there's a possible double engine failure that is something that you see in terms of a reason. What is really the protocol when it comes to technical difficulties such as these?
See, the altitude when they took off, right, it was like close to 500-600 feet. So at that altitude, if you have like complete power loss, then it becomes really difficult to recover from that. But every pilot is like well trained to do this. But since the aircraft was so close to the ground, so it must have been like difficult for them to like control. But they must have gone through all the checklist and everything. And what?
So basically, what you're saying is that since the aircraft was at a low height at that particular point in time, it made it difficult for the pilot to find room to maneuver the aircraft back to safety?
Yes, that could be one of the things, right? Because since you're very close to the ground, you don't have room, right? A lot of room, right? And you don't have a lot of time to think. You have to react quickly, and that's how things work, right? So
absolutely. Also, there's a lot of speculation in terms of the flap, right? Could you also explain to us the function of a flap? What is a flap on an aircraft, and how, with the help of this passenger jet simulation, help us understand where can a flap be controlled from?
Right, so we had flaps before takeoff and during landing also. So flaps, basically what they do is they generate a lot of lift, which helps us in getting airborne with a shorter distance, right? So, and also during landing, right, to slow us down, we use flaps. So it's a part on the wing that extends downwards.
So is this an auto control? Is this a manual control? How does that work, the operation of a flap?
It's completely manual, right? It's determined, so the flap setting is basically determined using the current weather conditions and the weight of the aircraft and all of that.
So Pushkar, from within this aircraft, this passenger jet simulation, where would you be operating the flap from?
Right, so this is how a flaps control look like, right? So right now it's on 0, so this is how we add flaps 1, flaps 2, and that's how the flaps get extended, and we also get the image on the screens that flaps have been extended or retracted.
Right. So the probable reasons that we're looking at this point in time, it's a possible double engine failure that we're looking at. Is there any other possibility that you're seeing based on your experience when it comes to this particular aircraft or when it comes to a particular airborne?
See, I'm not exactly sure what exactly happened on that scenario, but what I'll say is bird activity could be one of the reasons. I mean, there are multiple reasons, but bird activity could be one of the reasons that we need to look at.
So there you have it. Those are some of the reasons that might have led to this really unfortunate tragedy unfolding, where you do have 241 people on that particular aircraft losing their lives. Bird activity, possible double engine failure, those are some of the reasons that Pushkar outlined as a commercial pilot.
The last 1 month, if you see, the share prices of Denzol Engineering has fallen more than 58%.
Why are the rating firms calling the debt payments as default?
We have 2 credible credit rating agencies on March 4th coming and downgrading the stock to D.
Statements are consistently being proven wrong,
right.
And transactions are being taken place which are different from what they were originally pictured to be.
The company claimed it would roll out 6,400 electric vehicles. But what it has rolled out is a shocking scam. Funds meant for the project were funneled allegedly back to the promoters, the Junkie brothers. What did the money buy? Not EVs, of course, but a lavish flat in Gurgaon's luxurious DLF Carmelias.
News is not just headlines, it is what impacts you. And news should never be mistaken for noise. What matters is the reality. Accurate, in-depth, and with the right perspective. For over 20 years, I have been a journalist, and never has clarity mattered more than now. At Newsnight, we go beyond the surface. We dissect the details, challenge the narratives, and bring you the unparalleled clarity you deserve in a world clouded by misinformation. We are bold, we are direct. Newsnight, for the news in your interest. Only on NDTV 24/7.
After 2 years of the India-Canada tensions, it's the big relationship reboot. Indian Prime Minister heads to the G7 summit. Indispensable India on the global stage. Modi's multilateral momentum. NDTV live from the G7 summit in Canada.
Air India plane crash in Ahmedabad, India's latest aviation disaster. India responds to the tragedy. Facts first, 100% ground reports.
Under this is the tail,
Here, and this is just one of the buildings that will give you an idea of the quantum of loss.
24 to 48 hours is the deadline that has been given for the DNA testing.
Maximum reporters, maximum coverage on NDTV.
If it matters to you, if it matters to you, if it matters to you, it matters to India. It matters to India. It matters to India. And it matters to me. And it matters to me.
Air India plane crash in Ahmedabad, India's latest aviation disaster. India responds to the tragedy. Facts first, 100% ground reports.
Under this is the tail,
Here, and this is just one of the buildings that will give you an idea of the quantum of loss.
24 to 48 hours is the deadline that has been given for the DNA testing.
Maximum reporters, maximum coverage on NDTV.
बाहर निकला तो मैंने देखा कि आवाज जोर से आवाज आया विंग्स का, फिर पूरा धुआं भर गया.
मेरे खुद को भी बिलीव नहीं होता कि मैं कैसे उसमें से जिंदा बाहर निकला.
To a very special program. My colleague Shiv Arur and I are standing in front of this 3D rendition of a Boeing 787 aircraft. Now we've spent a considerable amount of time on this 3D rendition, and what we're going to try and do, among many things over the next couple of hours, is actually go through various components of the aircraft and talk about what is important in the crash of AI-171 and what could have gone wrong.
Because the 6 parts of this aircraft, we're going to talk about all of them one by one. Whether it is the tail section right at the back where the black box has been found, to the engines themselves, to the nose section, to other parts, the landing gear. We're going to go through them one by one, Vishnu, to piece together the key components that might actually reveal what may have happened.
So what we can actually do is first let's take a look at the engines themselves. You can see the engine over here. This is a General Electric engine. It's got 70,000 pounds of thrust, so it's among the most powerful engines of its class in the world. It's got 2 engines like this. The big question is, how could this jetliner have lost 2 engines simultaneously? Now let's roll that footage, which we've also got, of a close-up of the engine, the debris of the engine, which is what investigators are going to be looking at very closely. So if we can just get that up at a certain stage of that video, then that would be great. But in case we don't have it, the other key component, and let's keep turning the aircraft if we can turn the model of the aircraft, then I can show you that we'll also be focusing on the wings of the aircraft.
Yeah.
So let's focus a little bit more on this. We haven't been able to move the aircraft. We'll be focusing on the wings over here.
We'll get the aircraft to move,
right?
but yeah.
We're going to get the aircraft to rotate, and then we're going to be focusing on this aircraft over here. Yeah, so we've got it to move. So I'm just going to, as we see the engine shift, we're also going to focus a little bit on the wings, right, and the surface of the wings, which we're going to see in a little while from now, and the flap is something that's going to be absolutely
That's going to be visible right now as the aircraft rotates.
Yeah,
the flaps is something we're going to talk about
3
closely.
seconds, if we can pause it. Let's pause right there. Let's pause right over there so that we can take a look at this area right over here. This entire area, this is the wing structure of the aircraft. And this area that you see over here is where the flaps for a takeoff needed to have been in takeoff configuration. When the aircraft rose, there is a lot of conversation which is taking place about whether these flaps were properly configured, because if there was, for example, an engine failure in one of the 2 engines of the aircraft, and then there was an improper flap configuration, right, then the aircraft couldn't have climbed.
Absolutely. So we've talked about the flaps, we've talked about the engines as well. As you can see, the 787 is a twin engine passenger jet. Now we're also going to talk about the tail section. Now this section that you see here, viewer, is the same section that you saw lodged in the roof of a building. In one of the most, upsetting and troubling images, you've seen the tail section of the aircraft near intact, unlike the rest of the aircraft, Vishnu, that was lodged in the roof of that medical college building. And that is where the black box of this aircraft has actually been recovered from. It would actually be in this particular area.
In this area over here, right over here, underneath the tail, is where you'd have the black box. And I'll tell you a little bit about the location itself. It's actually believed to be the strongest aircraft, a part of the aircraft, one of them. It would be in a hardened sort of shelter, as it were. The black box itself is designed to withstand the impact of crashes. Could be immersed as well in water for an extended period of time, temperatures in case there's a fire and an explosion, as was the case this time. But this area of the aircraft is the one that we are talking about being a relatively quote-unquote safe area. That has been recovered this evening at about 5:10 is when I got a message from somebody saying that, look, we can confirm now to you that we have located the black box, which is the cockpit voice recorder and the digital flight data recorder.
Okay, we're going to try and put some of those images on our screen, because we've got relevant, specific images of the tail and the parts that we're talking about on our screen that we will talk about, and our producers should be putting those out on the screen as we talk about them. But before we move on from the black box area, Vishnu, just one quick query. The black box is situated in this tail section of the aircraft, I'm assuming, because this is the part that would be least vulnerable in the event of a crash, and that seems to be borne out by the photographs as well.
So that's an image actually, and it's interesting that the Prime Minister was just underneath it, but because what the area that he was looking at over there, let's have that image of Prime Minister Modi, is just above him is the area somewhere there where the cockpit voice recorder and the digital flight data recorder would be located. The digital flight data recorder records parameters every second, thousands of them on every aspect of this flight. The cockpit voice recorder, as the name suggests, measures or records on a hard drive the conversations between the pilots. All right, let's keep moving this model of the aircraft itself. But at this stage, we're also joined by Sanjay Lazar, who is an expert on aviation and has been tracking this very closely with us. Sanjay, thanks very much for being with us. It is welcome news that we've got the black box of the aircraft actually out. In terms of, there are lots of theories doing the rounds. What are you hearing from, knowledgeable sources on what this may be all about?
Well, Vishnu and Shiv, as you know, that we've had a maelstrom of speculation and theories and conspiracy theories even over the last 24 hours, and that's been really tragic, adding fuel to the fire. But as we see it, plain and simple, and as you've said on your show yesterday as well as today, it appears to be a loss of power, loss of thrust to both engines. Now, what caused it? and is something that the investigators will look at. I know that the Accident Investigation Board has been on site. 2 NTSB people have also arrived, I'm given to understand. And I think some British team is also arriving, to assist. The NIA and the ATS are also there. So there's all sorts of people there. The recovery of the black box, so to speak, DFDR and CVR is a great step. This will help decipher exactly what happened. It records obviously the last 2 hours of the cockpit conversation. In this case, there wasn't that much, but it would have recorded everything. And the other part is the DFDR, which will translate into digital data all the parameters of whether the fuel, the engine thrust, the power, everything, including the vibrations, the flaps, all signals of the aircraft are actually transmitted into digital data and then stored on this. We are happy, it's a great sign that it's in intact condition, because in earlier accidents we've seen where this was damaged and then had to be sent to Seattle or Florida for deciphering. So this is something that our people in India could probably tackle. So that's 2 very good signs that we've seen.
Angad Singh is also with us, very well respected aviation analyst and commentator. Angad, welcome.
And should we also call him a friend?
And a very close personal friend of both Vishnu and me. Angad, it's been 2 days. It's been over a day since the crash. Much has been said. There's been a lot of debate. There's been a huge amount of speculation, obviously. The 2 crash videos, and I want to put those on our screen right now for everyone to see. Not that anyone's going to be able to forget those pictures in a hurry. What did you make of those, Angad? What's your best guess at this time over what may have happened?
So Shiv, Vishnu, thanks for having me. I think the videos that we've seen, both the CCTV footage from the left side of the takeoff and the earlier video that came from the right, I think both those videos are, I want to sound a note of caution about both those videos. Mm-hmm. They are not high resolution. They are not clear videos. They show with ground references the attitude of the aircraft as it was in its final moments, certainly. But I would like that people wouldn't draw conclusions about things like flap configurations from these videos. The 787 has an enormous, heavily cambered, deceptively curvy wing, and it's very difficult at the best of times with clear imagery to decode what flap setting has been selected on an aircraft departing or arriving. So from these videos, it's too early, and I would that's a note of caution I want to sound, that it's premature to look at these videos from the rear aspect of the aircraft and draw conclusions about flap configurations and things like that. Generally, for an aircraft to go down like this at this phase of flight at takeoff, the educated guess, and it is a guess, is that it would be a loss of thrust, because nothing else short of something that catastrophic would have this result.
All right, so point taken about that flap setting. It is nonetheless one of the talking points in the aviation community among pilots. So what I thought I'd do is go through various theories. There are about 4 or 5 different theories which have been stated by aviation experts looking at this. Remember, these are theories, these are not the facts. The black box is now out. It's going to come out with the data. There would be an accident report as well. But till then, this is what experts have been saying. What exactly did result in this? Remember, the flight data recorder and the cockpit voice recorder have now been found, and hopefully in a finite period of time we will know what exactly took place. But let's play out a couple of scenarios. The first scenario, immediately after rotation, in other words, the moment the plane gets into the sky, a single engine failure or a bird strike potentially occurs, drastically increasing the cockpit workload for the pilots. The crew focused on the engine issue may have mistakenly not retracted or brought up the landing gear. That's a standard procedure post takeoff to aid climb performance. While troubleshooting in the cockpit, the plane could have slowed below the minimum speed required to maintain control with one engine out, leading to a stall that resulted in the crash. At about 400 feet, recovery from a stall when the aircraft was not climbing is nearly impossible. The second scenario, an extremely rare dual engine failure occurs shortly after takeoff, rendering the plane a glider with no thrust. Without engine power, the crew couldn't retract the landing gear, and the resulting drag caused a rapid loss of airspeed, leading to a stall. At such a low altitude, no time to run the dual engine failure checklist or attempt an engine restart. There was no time, the crash taking place. Scenario number 3, video evidence suggests that the flaps on the aircraft, this is where the flaps in the aircraft are, but in this particular grab of the actual aircraft, it suggests that there was something potentially unusual. Video evidence suggests the flaps were retracted, which is unusual since flaps are always extended during takeoff to provide extra lift at low speeds. If a pilot mistakenly retracted the flaps instead of the landing gear during a high workload situation in the cockpit, such as an engine failure, hypothetically, it could have significantly reduced lift, especially with only one engine operational, potentially causing a stall. A fourth scenario, during an engine failure at 400 feet, the crew mistakenly shuts down the operational engine instead of the failed one. Now, that is a known error in aviation history. I would like to say at this low altitude, there would, if this took place, no time to restart the engine, leading to a loss of thrust and control. The conclusion over here, regardless of the specific cause, the crash likely stemmed from a sudden loss of thrust and the subsequent handling of the aircraft under critical conditions. This is conjecture, but this is what the pilot community is talking about. The flight data recorder and the cockpit voice recorder, part of the black box, have been located, and we'll get the data soon.
And the finest aviation voices alone here on NDTV, welcoming Air Marshal Sanjeev Kapoor onto this special broadcast where we're talking about the anatomy of this disaster as the investigation actually kicks off. Air Marshal Kapoor, the two videos that we've just been speaking about, as well as everything else that you've seen and heard in the last 36 hours since Flight 171 went down, what would you say happened? You know, we understand that the investigation is still to kick off in earnest, but what would you say has happened? What would be your best guess, sir?
Whatever I have seen and whatever is being flashed out on the social media and the channels, a few things that in my appreciation are clear is that the path of the aircraft when it struck the hospital building is exactly in line with the center line, that is 0523. So the probability of an engine failure wherein the aircraft yaws invariably to the side of the failed engine seems less. It could be there is some sort of a yaw towards the left if you see closely the aeroplane before it is meshing into the ground. If you could have the video, the one which is taken from the rooftop by some person, that indicates the aircraft is yawing to the left, but that could be due to strong crosswinds also. It's an afternoon time. Temperatures, the tarmac temperatures must be over 50 degrees centigrade, huge thermals, and the area around the airfield is heavily populated. And I have flown there personally many a times. There is large amount of bird activity in and around Ahmedabad airfield, and afternoon is the period when there is a huge bird activity. So, but the videos don't indicate a flock of birds or other things. The second option could be the mishandling, which you have just covered. By that height, generally, the 400 to 500 feet, the undercarriage is up. But in this video, we find the undercarriage down. But the crew has given a mayday call. That is very surprising. And from the videos, from the time of unstick to the crash, it is just about 30 seconds. I was watching in a few channels. They have put a timer from the CCTV, which is indicating from the left side. From the time the aircraft unstuck to the time it crashed is precisely about 32 seconds. Now, in this 32 seconds from the period the aircraft is unstuck to crash, he's found time to give a mayday call. So there is something serious in the cockpit, in my appreciation, because it is very rare in fighters or in single-engine aircraft we generally give a call and it is some grave emergency. But in a commercial airline, fully loaded aircraft with max fuel, full passengers, hot afternoon, when the performance parameters themselves are at its extreme, because Ahmedabad is typically 11,500 feet runway, and from the videos which I've seen, it has taken more than 2/3 or 3/4 of the runway length to unstick. So, and the speed which the ADSB is indicating is around 174 knots. That must be close to the unstick speed. So the aircraft is at very low speed, and it is indicated by the attitude. The videos show the wings are flexed and curved up, means the wings are stressed to give the lift which the pilot is asking. So it is beyond doubt that the aircraft is at very low speed. It is mushing into the ground. That also is obvious. Now, what is the reason for speed not building up? Because a single engine itself is capable of taking the aircraft away. And all these aircrafts are, flying over Atlantic, Pacific, and this thing. It is certified at each stage to be capable of maintaining with one engine. The accidental switching off of fuel, this thing is the conspiracy theory is also floating around. That also may be an option wherein the fuel to both the engines have shut off, and the crew have realized, and in this bargain they have taken the and it all happened in from the time, in my guess, from Mayday call to crash is just about 20 to 25 seconds. So in this 20 to 25 seconds after the pilot has given a Mayday call to crash, they must be busy in ascertaining what could have been. And you are too close to ground. You are too close to ground with hardly any height, with the temperature and weight not in your favor. And when you raise flaps, the first thing the pilot does in any aeroplane is to lower the altitude. You have to build speed, and generally in these big aeroplanes, the flaps are in stages. They are in 2 or 3 parts. It is not one flap setting, and the flap setting is subject to a lot of other factors, performance parameters, and so flaps are always retracted in phases. As you reach
hold that thought for a moment, because I just want to play out a certain video, a package, to make the point that this aircraft was very heavily deployed in service. We've got a list of the 10 previous flights that it had operated. Let's take a look.
The last 10 flights that have been taken by this particular aircraft, its registration number is VTANB. On the 7th of June, I just want to show you the last 10 flights. 7th of June, it flew a very normal flight from Delhi to France. The very next day, this aircraft, in fact, the same day, the aircraft flew right back. And this was all completely normal. I'm talking about the exact same aircraft, airframe that has crashed. Then there was a flight from Delhi to Melbourne on the 8th of June, and then Melbourne straight back to Delhi on the 8th of June, the same day. Then you had Delhi to Tokyo on the 9th of June, and then Tokyo back to Delhi on the 10th of June. These are the last 10 flights. I just want to give you a sense of how busy this aircraft has been, and it's difficult to imagine that it is no longer there. Delhi to France on the 11th of June, and then France straight back to Delhi on the same day. So this was a busy aircraft that was conducting all manner of flights. Delhi to Ahmedabad on the 12th of June was the flight towards Ahmedabad, and from Ahmedabad the next day, of course, is the ill-fated flight that never made it, and it crashed in Ahmedabad. So 10 different flights. This is what the journey of VTANB actually looks like. It was a busy aircraft, one of many 787 Dreamliners in service with Air India, and the first crash of this aircraft type, that's the dotted black line that you see there, was supposed to be its last flight, but it never really made it. So Vishnu, before we began this broadcast, the Directorate General of Civil Aviation, which you track, just put out new orders and enhanced inspection requirements for Air India's 787s across a variety of different criteria. What does that actually mean? We'll come to this in just a moment, but what was that? What was that order?
That's just come in over here. It's not what we are showing on the screen, but let's just talk a little bit about the new stuff first, and then that.
Yeah.
The Director General of Civil Aviation has told Air India, which operates 33 Dreamliner aircraft, that they have to be very careful about the engine parameters of the Boeing 787. The fuel systems have to be monitored. Several electronic systems associated with the thrust of the aircraft, the engine performance of the aircraft have to be monitored as well. I think the takeoff performance of the jet needs to be looked at very closely. There have to be tests, before the aircraft, additional tests, before the aircraft is actually operated. So a series of fairly important technical steps which have to be adopted by the airline. And what we're going to try and do is talk to our experts and figure out what exactly each of those are. But those are all important steps designed to enhance safety.
And while we're talking about those new enhanced inspection requirements, which is basically a list of things in addition to the normal inspections that are carried out, that have to now be carried out on those 39 Dreamliners in service with Air India, could this be a precursor to larger action, potentially something as big as a fleet-wide grounding within Air India, within the world? We don't know, we don't want to speculate, but Boeing, which is the manufacturer of the 787 and introduced these aircraft into the market back in 2011, Vishnu, worth noting that this was actually the first accident of this particular type. So we've got some just some historical information about Boeing and the track record that it has had so far. This is only by way of information. It is not indicative at all. 241 people died in yesterday's accident involving the 787. But there are other accidents that we have seen in the recent past, which has put Boeing into a very difficult an extended period of reputational damage and multiple investigations. There was the Jeju air crash of a 737 in 2024, in which a huge number, 179 people had died. The Air India Express Kozhikode accident, I was actually in the city just a few days after it happened. Also a 737, 21 people of a larger number on board died in that accident. Vishnu, the Lion Air crash of 2018, which really started this entire bad period, if I can call it that, for Boeing, in which 189 people died, which was followed just a few months later by the Ethiopian air crash, which all came down to something called the Maneuvering Characteristics Augmentation System, or MCAS, triggering one of the largest investigations into Boeing in history. So all of this data just to suggest that there could be more action ahead, and this isn't just a local aviation accident here in India, Vishnu. There could be action going forward.
No, I
Boeing
think that's
has
a really
gotten into the investigation as well.
I think it's really important. And, the point is that Boeing has suffered a huge reputational sort of issue in the last several years that has largely to do with the Boeing 73 MAX series of aircraft. There were certain design changes which were made and flight control systems which were changed. There was a new system called the MCAS. Pilots around the world who'd bought the MAX 8 hadn't been trained in its use. And as a result of that and certain flight control issues that resulted in 2 crashes, the American FAA, that's their regulator, grounded the aircraft. It was grounded across the world. It had a catastrophic reputational problem for Boeing. They lost their lead very clearly to Airbus, which in any case was going down. But this aircraft has not had that reputation. It's had a fairly stellar reputation. But the reason I think that we're talking a lot about this is because if there is a significant finding which emerges out of the black box, then it's not just Air India which might end up having to temporarily ground its fleet.
It could be a global directive as well.
This could be a larger directive to other. And the fact that you've got the UK regulator, you've got the American regulator, and you've got the manufacturer involved means that they will be very diligent in looking at what exactly the evidence is.
Let's bring in our experts on this. Sanjay, to you first. We don't want to jump the gun, obviously, but this enhanced safety inspection for the 787s in service with Air India, do you think it could be a precursor to a larger, more drastic action on the fleet?
Well, Shiv, I went through the circular of the DGCA and the letter to Air India, and it actually is quite a measured, deep dive check that they're asking Air India to do into all their 787s that are flying. Now let's, Vishnu pointed this out. There are 1175 787s flying around the world today. They've done more than 5 million flights in the last 15 years. we've got a total of 32 million flying hours, approximately, and this is Boeing's March figures. So it's a very significant number. We've not had a single accident barring the tragic 171 that we've seen yesterday. So I do not see immediate ramifications for global 787 operations. That being said, should the black box and the investigation reveal that there is something tectonic, in the systems, software systems, or the engine thrust or whatever, it could result in either all aircraft with that engine having to go through checks like we've already seen with the Pratt and Whitney on the Airbus fleet, or it could be a total grounding if it's a software issue itself. Now, I do not believe that it should be something that drastic, and I pray that it isn't, because Boeing's reputation is really surviving basically on the 787 and the 777 until now, because otherwise it's just been trashed because of all the Senate hearings and all the wrongdoings during the MAX period. So this is going to be a very critical period. I think the DGCA will be looking at it with very, very magnifying glass. The NTSB being present in India along with the CAA and the Aircraft Accident Investigation Board will also be very, very sharp on this front. So
what I thought I'd do, Sanjay, half a second. I just want to keep the strike rotating. Angad, I want to go through what the DGCA has said and just run us through some of these systems. An inspection of the fuel parameter monitoring and associated system checks. In simple terms, what does that mean?
So, Vishnu, I think that at the moment, the DGCA checks that have been announced, they strike me as precautionary. They're looking at exactly the same things that we're speculating about right now, and saying let's just monitor these likely causes going forward. I think as you open this program with the flight data recorder is going to tell us what actually went wrong. Until then, this is all the DGCA just sort of covering its bases, as it were. Air India is the only Indian operator of the 787. I think Indigo leases their example. And so this is just a way of the DGCA just saying, look, this is an unprecedented accident. We have to cover our bases. So here are the likely causes, and we need these to be looked at much more thoroughly. At the moment, that's all they can do.
Sure. I just want to go through a few of the other points. An electronic engine control system test and an engine fuel-driven actuator operational test and oil system check. In simple terms, for our viewers, Air Marshal, what do these mean? Firstly, an electronic engine control system test.
Modern machines are heavily embedded with technology. Unlike the aircraft which we flew, it was all stick throttle, and the gauges, they were all analog. Over the years, the integration, and this is a fully glass cockpit with full automation, fly-by-wire, and it has huge amount of redundancies. So what happens typically after any crash, be it the Air Force or any other country or any other airline, it is called a one-time check. So what DGCA has ordered here is a one-time check, and it is done after every major accident or incident. This is like, if you recall, the ALHs were down of the HAL a few months ago after a few Coast Guard accident. So the fleet is put through certain times the parameters which they suspect is checked once again to ascertain that these 4 or 5 things which you read out are not a probable cause. And once the technical team and the engineers certify that all these parameters and the components are within limits and are serviceable, the go-ahead is given and the normal flying is resumed. But it is a procedure. It's in Air Force is called a one-time check, and that is what the DGCA has ordered.
We also are welcoming onto our coverage this evening James Healy-Pratt. He's aviation partner with Keystone Law. James, welcome. Thanks for being with us and your time here on this broadcast. I wish these were in better circumstances, but we are talking about a very, very serious aviation accident, and it does have clear international ramifications. American agencies are participating in this investigation as well. Could you give us your perspective on what you think the next few days and weeks are going to look like. The investigation has just begun.
Well, good evening. Yes, I think all of our thoughts are probably with the families of the 290 who lost their lives, of which 241 were passengers and crew on board Flight 171. And what those families want, and I know this from over 30 years of experience of helping families and investigating these sort of accidents, is they want their loved ones to be identified and returned to them so that they can be grieved. And so a lot of DNA work is going on at the moment. There may well be an agency helping from the UK. They're called the UK DVI, the Disaster Victim Identification Team. And they'll be certainly helping the Indian authorities in relation to the 52 British passengers on board who lost their lives. So it's the recovery and identification phase, obviously, and then the other issue that we're all waiting for is the results of the black box, because that will give us the answers that, of course, the families want to know about as well. And so the black boxes are critical. Everything ahead of that is speculation. I think we all know that as experts, experienced.
All right. I've been also joined by Aishwarya Jain, our correspondent, who's been tracking the story very, very closely. Aishwarya, what's happening now? I mean, do we have investigators at the site? What exactly are they doing?
The experts have stated, and the teams that went inside the crash site had specifically told us that they want a daytime to lift the tail, which was hanging on the rooftop of the hostel. That's ground plus 5-story building, and they have cut its edges, but to lift it down they need very specific cranes. The NDRF, SDRF, along with the army officials also been roped in to pull that portion of the aircraft down, the tail that we are talking about. And tomorrow morning is the time that we have been told that that particular work will start. But the NDRF team also looking at gaining from the debris, the forensic teams which are also there, taking the evidences out from the aircraft, important material being taken apart from. But apart from it, of course, as I was reporting from the civil hospital, 219 DNA test samples have been collected so far, and 8 bodies have been given to the family members.
All right, Aishwarya, thanks very much for sharing those details with us. Mr. Healy, I just wanted to come back to you for another key point about this. Now, in the next couple of days, we're going to see a lot of claims being made. We're going to be seeing claims to insurance experts, to insurers. It's a complete hull loss. And obviously, there's compensation for people who've been killed in the crash, people who've lost their lives on the ground as well. Do you see this as becoming one of the most costly claims in any recent crash?
Well, quite possibly. Again, we haven't got the black box evidence. But in the event that this is a Boeing or a General Electric, and GE make the engines, the Gen X jet engines, if there is a US product liability issue, or a defect, then unfortunately the cost will be much, much more than if it is purely a matter of pilot error or maintenance in relation to the airline. But you have to look at how different legal systems deal with death. And America is the most generous jurisdiction on the planet. India is less so, and the UK is somewhere in the middle. So it really does depend on what causes are identified as to how it will happen. If it's purely airline, it will be rather different than if it was a mixture of the aircraft plus the airline. So we'll have to see. But probably for kind of Indian domestic purposes, I think this probably will be the most expensive loss of aviation disaster.
All right. Well, you know, one of the most remarkable stories that have emerged out of all of this is that story of that one survivor from the plane. Remember, there were 242 people on board. That includes the crew members. One person, a British national, managed to get out. He spoke in an interview earlier on today. Let's listen in to what he said.
His name is Vishwas Kumar Ramesh. He's a British Indian national, miraculously survived. Not just survived, but survived in pretty good condition. Very, very superficial injuries. Both the Prime Minister and the Home Minister met with him yesterday and today. And he has lived to tell the tale. I'm told, Vishnu, that his brother has left Leicester and he's on his way to India right now to obviously take his brother back. I can only imagine what that's going to be like. Imagine 1 out of 242 people living to tell the tale after an air crash of this kind. And then he's going to have to make his way back to England now. And I don't know how long that's going to take. But these images that you have on your screen of the tail of the aircraft.
And this is the exact dreamliner.
This is the seating plan of the 787, Vishnu.
Seat 11A is where this gentleman was seated. And in that interview, which we'll play out in a moment from now, he actually says that there was space on his side for him to get out, whereas there was no space to his right to get out. In terms of where the aircraft had smashed into that building, he saw dead bodies in front of him and in other areas. He pointed to air hostesses possibly being there. Now, if that is the case, then if he's seated in 11A, then this is one of the seats of air hostesses and it's near an emergency exit. So this is where he actually was. I'm unclear how he managed to get out. Was the fuselage broken over here? Was there an emergency exit through which he was able to exit? He's not entirely clear himself about what happened, but think about it, in a gigantic aircraft going down to row number 40, it's just one person in seat number 11A who managed
Vishnu,
to get out.
I wanted to bring Angad in on one aspect of this. Angad, and many of the things that have been said about this miracle survivor has been in the realm of speculation. It's led to a bunch of articles, Angad, about, are there safe seats on aircraft and, other questions like that. We've seen experts weigh in as well. So I want an expert sort of view on this, because there are people out there literally Googling, are some seats safer than others in an aircraft? And apparently on some travel websites, people are actually trying to choose their seats in this manner as well. That's the kind of age we live in. Angad, please throw some wisdom on this.
So oddly enough, Shiv, statistically there are safe seats in aircraft. I think, if I remember correctly, statistics of air crashes over many years show that seats either in the far end, the aft of the aircraft, or right up front are safer than the seats in the middle. And that was clearly not the case in this incident, where 11A is sort of amidships. It's just forward of the wing, where the wing meets the fuselage. But I mean, to your point, that the word miracle applies here. There's no other word for it. This considering what we saw, considering the fireball, considering the extent of the damage to the aircraft and buildings on the ground, this is a complete fluke, a blessing from above, if you will, that this man in 11A
how he
survived.
Actually got out, what the sequence of events
and the fact that he was ambulatory after coming out of the aircraft,
walking
is incredible.
and nearly completely okay, superficial wounds.
Let's listen to what he said in this interview.
मेरे खुद को भी बिलीव नहीं होता कि मैं कैसे उसमें से जिंदा बाहर निकला.
The miracle man who defied death. The lone survivor among the 242 on board the fateful Air India flight that crashed in Ahmedabad on Thursday. As the disturbing images of the plane turning into a ball of fire numbed the nation, the video of an injured man in a blood-stained white t-shirt limping his way out of the debris became the image of hope amid distress. He is Vishwas Kumar Ramesh, the sole survivor and passenger of the ill-fated flight. Vishwas was on seat 11A. He later recounted the crash horror and his unbelievable escape from the hospital where he's being treated for burns.
वो मेरे नज़रों के सब सामने हुआ था। मेरे खुद को भी बिलीव नहीं होता कि मैं कैसे उसमें से ज़िंदा बाहर निकला, क्योंकि थोड़ा टाइम लेके तो मेरे को लगा था कि मैं भी मरने वाला हूँ, लेकिन जब मेरी आँख खुल के मैं देखा ना तो मुझे लगा मैं ज़िंदा हूँ। तो मैंने ट्राई किया, जब मेरी सीट थे वो मेरी बेल्ट निकाला, मैंने वो ट्राई किया जहाँ से निकल सकता वहाँ से, तो मैं निकल गया वहाँ से। जब मैं जहाँ लैंड हुआ था ना वो नीचे की साइड थी, तो जब वहाँ थोड़ा पेस भी था प्लेन के जब बाहर, तो जब जैसे मेरा डोर टूटा ना सब, तो मैंने देखा ना जब सामने कि थोड़ा इधर पेस है, तो मैं ट्राई कर सकता हूँ निकलने के लिए, तो मैंने ट्राई किया निकलने के लिए, तो फिर मैं निकल गया उधर।
Vishwas is a 40-year-old British national who was visiting family in India. He was returning to the UK with his elder brother, Ajay Kumar Ramesh. An eyewitness also told NDTV that he saw Vishwas being flung out of the burning plane.
कैसा हुआ कि हमें भी ये यकीन नहीं था कि कोई बच के निकलेगा। जैसे वो हमें ऐसा लगा जब मैंने वो जो आधा जो प्लेन ब्रेक हुआ ना सर, तो जो ब्रेक होने का जो पॉइंट था उस पॉइंट पे शायद वो बंदा बैठा हुआ था। तो जैसे ही ब्लास्ट हुआ, ऐसे ब्रेक हुआ ना, तो उछल के वो नीचे, उस पे भी फ्यूल तो उड़ा, उसको आग तो लगी, पर वो जो दूसरे लोग जो जल गए, जैसे सीएम और भी जो पैसेंजर्स है जो बच ही नहीं पाए, जल गए, वो जैसे ब्लास्ट होके नीचे पछड़ा के नीचे गिरा।
Vishwas has lived in London for 20 years, where his wife and child also reside. In Leicester, Vishwas's brother is both relieved and sad. Happy to know that Vishwas survived, but broken at the loss of their other brother.
Yeah, that's the only thing he was worried about. He wasn't even worried about himself or any injuries that his body has. He was just worried about finding my other brother.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Friday morning visited Vishwas in the Ahmedabad hospital. Vishwas's story is nothing short of a miracle. The only glimmer of hope amid the sordid story of death and destruction. An NDTV Bureau report.
Sanjay, you know, one of the problems which we've seen with Directorate General of Civil Aviation, DGCA, investigations are that their investigations take forever. The final report takes a great deal of time. How important is it, given the international ramifications of this particular incident, for this report, at least a preliminary report, to come out in days, if not just 1 or 2 weeks?
Well, Vishnu, I do believe in this particular case, given the global perspective that it has, and the other two investigating agencies who are joining them, I do believe that we will see some sort of preliminary report in the next 7 to 10 days. We also know that the accident board has 30 days to submit a provisional report for their own findings. The DGCA final report obviously will take a while, sometimes 3 months, 6 months, even a year, and we've seen in the past. But I do believe in this case, because it's impacting all the 787s globally, there's going to be some kind of finding and preliminary resources released quite early in the day. On the point of passenger in 11A, if I may, I wanted to just point out, Vishnu, it's next to the L2 door. The air hostesses he speaks of would be sitting on the jump seat in front of him. And I'm strongly believe that, we've seen from the visuals, the tail section broke on top of the hostel building. The rest of the body broke into 2 or maybe more pieces when it hit the ground. When you look at what the eyewitnesses say, it obviously means that it probably broke at the position of the L2 door and he was flung out. My concern was about his seat belt, but here he clearly says in the video that you've just played that I unbuckled my video, saw the gap and got out. Now, how he did that is, really miraculous, because given that, most of the aircraft would have been on flames, which he didn't mention, but it would have been, a fireball. But I'm glad that he got out, and I pray that he's healthy and safe. That's important.
Marshal Kapoor, final question to you. We're almost out of time. With everything we know and seen so far by way of videos and the comments that have come out from the authorities, do you think it's going to be a long investigation or a pretty brief one?
I guess it will take a few months for the final report to come. They will look at every aspect, both sabotage angle. They will look at the performance. They will look at the fuel systems. They will look at aerodynamic considerations. They will look at some reports I was reading somewhere that some people heard a third kind of a sound at unstick. So there is something which has failed at unstick. And the crew precisely had 20 seconds. So this factors also will be collaborated along with the FDR, CVR and other inputs which they will get. But like the other fellow panelists said, the preliminary report should be out in about 2 weeks' time. That's my guess.
2 weeks is quite brief, and we will, of course, still be on that story. I'd like to thank James, Angad, Marshal Kapoor and Sanjay very much for this. It is important, Vishnu, to have experts, who've been in the business, who've been in cockpits, who track this closely, to actually comment on this.
And can I just say something? Air India, in the middle of this massive transformation, it's a desperate effort to become possibly the world's best airline. This has been terrible, terrible news.
Yeah.
But there's a lot which they are doing to try and improve.
Yes.
And I'll tell you what, this is a gigantic Indian company. It employs thousands of people. It's going to be important for them to come back. I'm flying Air India day after tomorrow without thinking twice about that. I'm going on vacation.
Like thousands of
and
passengers
like tens
who
of thousands, who are doing that. But it is a low point for the airline. They've got their job cut out for them.
They've got their job cut out for them. And remember, as the investigation kicks in, Vishnu and I will be tracking every aspect of it across the weekend and the following week as well. We leave you for the moment, but our coverage continues after this break. In the meanwhile, watch this analysis by another expert on the only 2 videos we have of the final seconds of flight AI-171. As we speak, the cockpit voice recorder, the flight data recorder, the black box of flight AI-171 is in the process of being retrieved from the crash site, and that will hold the key to what happened to this ill-fated Boeing 787 of Air India. But in the meantime, all we can really do is look at the pictures, look at the images, look at the videos that have come forward, especially the 2 crash videos, to try and deduce from it what we can. And obviously we aren't going to do that ourselves. We will do that with experts. Joining us this evening on NDTV, over 24 hours after Flight 171 went down, I have with me Dr. Sumit Susilan, also known as Aviation Guru, someone who has written books and authored many articles as far as flight safety and accident investigations are concerned. Dr. Sumit, welcome to NDTV. I want to start by drawing your attention to these 2 videos. Dr. Sumit, you have seen these videos.
Yes,
they have been hugely shared since yesterday, shocking people across the world because they are looking at an actual crash taking place. But for an expert, what do these images tell you? Many people have said many things, that you can see the flaps, you can see the, something to do with the engines, the landing gear. What do you see in these pictures?
With the picture, I can see things while takeoff, everything was normal. But there was a different angle which no one had observed. There is something called load and trim. The aircrafts are balanced before the takeoff. And the ground team gives the aircraft balance, how much cargo they have put it in the front hold and the rear hold. And if the aircrafts are balanced, then only it will be able to smoothly take off. But over here, we can see they are not able to take off after the certain height. So there might be an angle of that also, that the rear cargo had fell down and had taken the aircraft down because the landing gear has not retracted back. So they have hardly got time.
But it seems to be that the pilot is pulling back on the stick and pointing the nose up. How do you explain that?
I was listening to the person who got survived from 11 Alpha. So according to him also that yes, he was listening to the thrust, they were trying hard for that thing. So it is the possibility because these are the GE engines, which is one of the best engines worldwide. We are known for this thing.
Thousands of aircraft run on these engines.
Definitely. And normally we always have, if any engine failure also, rarely, so it will one engine can go down. But both the engine going down simultaneously is something like unimaginable for us.
Many things have been said, Dr. Sumit, about the flaps.
Yes.
Now, I'll go to some of those still images. We've zoomed in on some of these images. this is just before the aircraft actually rotated and took off. Then we've got another image after it has taken off, just a few seconds before it impacts. These are, very low resolution CCTV images. Many people have said flaps are retracted, they should be extended during takeoff. But there are others who say in these pictures you cannot confirm whether this is the case or not.
Yes, we definitely can't, because the procedure was correctly done by the captain.
Yeah.
So there was no error we can find it from here, because we know the captains are the most experienced captain, because I have personally flown with Captain Sumit because I was a part of Air India. So I know how much experience they have. So there is such checks which they follow, the first officer and the captain throughout, because there's something called sterile cockpit time, where after the takeoff until they reach the cruise level, so no one disturb each other. So I think everything was followed exactly how they had to be followed.
And if there was something wrong, the cockpit would have warned them also. There would have been some kind of warning as well.
Yep.
Now,
yes, that's true.
Let's play out that video once again, because there are two crash videos. This is the second one, which is the complete crash sequence as captured by CCTV camera. From this point until the actual impact, Dr. Sumit, is 32 seconds.
Yes.
32 seconds is half a minute. From the time the aircraft leaves the ground till the time it hits the ground is just 32 seconds.
Yes.
Did the pilots, probably somewhere around this point when the aircraft stops climbing and starts to fall is when the Mayday call may have been issued to the air traffic control. What would the pilots have been doing at that last point? They would have been struggling to the aircraft seemed to be in control. The aircraft was not out of control, but they seemed to be wanting to try and get to climb.
Definitely, because when I see the aircraft was trying to climb, it was climbing up, and suddenly from a certain point, then it started coming down. It was some failure happened immediately when they had called the Mayday. And immediately, I think within 2 seconds, the ATC responded. Until the time, there was no response from their side. And normally, these aircrafts are pressurized in the cabin pressure of around 6,000 psi, which is the most comfortable psi. Whereas, if compared to Airbus 320 and all, that is pressurized in that 8,000 psi. So the cabin pressures are quite good. But there have been some rumors, or there was some news by the Boeing ex-employee itself that this cabin pressure, where there are some problems in engineering department as well.
Okay. We've got some final images showing you the different angles of it. This is the other video that came out first before the full crash video. This was taken from a residential neighborhood. And this also shows you a slightly closer look. And we look this video.
Tails going down. You can see the tails going down. It's like nose was still up. The tail. So that's why I was saying the load and trim.
So it would have hit tail first.
Yes.
In this way. Yeah. In this angle, you can see that the tail is down, the nose is up.
Yes.
But even in this, you cannot tell about the flaps. No. Even in this, it's not clear.
No, it's not clear. But I can say, because mostly this is a case of where the balancing, they are not able to balance it also. The tail was going down. If the nose is up and still the tail is going down, it means there might be a problem in the load and trim sheet. We have to take out the load and trim sheet, which can be with the ground engineering department. Normally they do the engineering where they balance it, they take it the signature of the captain before the takeoff. So now suppose they had given a certain numbers that they had kept a baggage of, this much a ton in the back and in the hold one they had given this. They approve it, they balance, they approve it. But if the number is not matching up, that will not come to know.
Two images comparing flaps, in a high resolution image of a Boeing 787 taking off, where you can clearly see the flaps. But this image has caused a lot of debate, Dr. Sumit, where people have said, in this one, you can see that the flaps are not extended. They are in retracted position, which is wrong for takeoff. But it is not, we cannot conclude that in this image.
I don't think that we have to compare.
That can only come out during the investigation.
Normally, during the air shows and all, they use the full power. And they go for an inclined takeoff also. So these engines can do that thing, because
even with the flaps retracted.
Definitely, they do it. They show the capability of the aircraft. And I have personally seen the capability of this aircraft, because recently happened like a couple of years back, we had a Wings India event where they had taken this aircraft for the demonstration, and we have seen the power of this aircraft. After that only they had got back-to-back orders for these aircrafts in India.
Okay. Dr. Sumit, thank you very much for helping us understand this complex issue. But like I always say, at the end of the day, the black box will hold all the keys.
Definitely.
The site mapping of the debris site will hopefully provide even more clues. And remember, it was one particular aircraft that went down yesterday, but it is an aircraft that has been in service with Air India for the last 11 years.
Hello, Moto.
Motorola, India's leading AI smartphone brand.
That's huge. That is a biggie. It's out there.
गोल्ड ग्लास क्लियर ग्लास, पार हो या नियर, सब कुछ दिखे क्लियर।
In the wake of Pahalgam, all eyes on the Amarnath Yatra. Amidst fear, faith and fortitude. India's biggest fight against terror. NDTV reports on the holy route, the Amarnath spirit.
The markets move fast.
And so should your portfolio. Expert insights, real-time stock picks.
Do I buy Ola?
Should I
or
hold
CDSL
for the long term? Buy, sell or hold.
The answers you need, straight from the experts.
Callers from India and across the world. Connect live, ask, decide and invest wisely.
Your portfolio, your future. Ask Profit.
Is your business future ready? Join the 13-week strategic ESG certification program for business sustainability and growth for CXO and business leaders by NDTV, Terry and Zenora. Master global ESG frameworks, gain real-world tools and lead with impact. Starts July 13th. Enroll now and power your business with sustainability.
Do you really know the company you invest in? What is the real picture behind presentations and claims? Is the outlook as rosy as the company claims?
Good evening and welcome. I'm Shiv Arur. As we talk about the investigation into Flight 171 and what may have made it crash, let us never for a moment forget that 241 lives were lost among the passengers and crew of that aircraft. There was only one survivor. 241 heartbreaks, the end of 241 dreams, many of them children, and the endless suffering of those who've been left behind. This is their story and we must never forget.
"241 lives gone in just 32 seconds. Families destroyed, futures erased. The Air India crash is not just one of India's biggest aviation tragedies, it is 241 heartbreaks. Cabin crew, parents, children, newlyweds, tourists, each with a story, each with a face, each with someone, somewhere, waiting for them. A wave that turned out to be a fine goodbye. Kinal Mistry, young, full of life. Kinal was home for medical treatment. Her last moments caught on camera, waving to her parents.
और उसका अगले साल एक्सीडेंट हो गया था इंडिया में ही। फिर उसका वर्क परमिट था, उसको जाना ही पड़ता था, तो उसका ट्रीटमेंट पूरा नहीं हुआ था, तो ये ट्रीटमेंट के लिए वापस आई थी। उसका 7 या 8 टीथ निकल गया था, तो इम्प्लांट करवाया, तो पूरा दांत उसका नया लगवाया था।
Labuben and Ramesh Bhai Thakkar were flying to London to meet their son. Today, that son is waiting with a DNA form in his hand. A family from Rajasthan's Banswara, a doctor couple and their 3 adorable children. This wasn't just another trip. They were starting over their life in London. They never got that chance. And then the most haunting image of all. 8-month-old Muhammad Ibrahim brought in to give a DNA sample to help identify his father. Ibrahim, too young to even understand the loss.
वो उनकी फ़्लाइट अगले हफ्ते थी और वो इस हफ्ते उनका मतलब जाने का था उनके हस्बैंड का, तो बस यहाँ ड्रॉप करने आए हम और within few minutes पता लगा कि ये हादसा हुआ है.
12 cabin crew were also killed in the line of duty. Captain Sumit Sabarbhal, Aparna Mahadik, Deepak Pathak, Sainita Chakravarti, Nagantho Kong Brela Patnam Sharma, Roshni Songare, Rajendra, Shraddha Dhawan, Maithili Patil, Irfan Sheikh, Lamnun Them Singson and Manisha Thapa.
दोपहर को मालूम पड़ा जब दुर्घटना घटी उस टाइम हम लोग घर में थे, तो पता चलने के बाद हम लोग बोले चलो देखते किसका क्या है. उसमें देखा तो मेरे लड़की का नाम. हाँ,
हमारी सोसाइटी में जो है एयर इंडिया के काफ़ी पायलट्स और क्रू मेंबर्स रहते हैं और हम लोग जो है नीचे वॉक करते समय या जो सोसाइटी के सार्वजनिक कार्यक्रम होते हैं उसमें एक दूसरे को मिलते थे, एक दूसरे को जानते थे. जैसे ये घटना घटी और उसके बाद जैसे अपर्णा का फोटो आया, मुझे ऐसा लगा कि हमारे कोई जान पहचान वाले एक्सपायर हुए हैं. हमने फ़ोन करके फिर पता किया और पूरी सोसाइटी को ऐसा लग रहा है कि सोसाइटी का कोई अपना चला गया है.
From Akola to Agra, Kangpoki to Mumbai, homes now filled with silence. 241 faces, 241 stories. They were loved, they were awaited, they had plans. And together they leave behind a question that haunts India. How could this happen? With Malvika, Bureau Report, NDTV.
Those shattering images of Flight 171 going down in Ahmedabad will never ever be forgotten. People are still looking at them here in India and across the world. Well, today I spoke to someone who's actually been in the cockpit of this very aircraft as a pilot, a former Air India pilot who retired just last year, just a few months ago, a 787 pilot with India's national carrier, now owned by Tata, who actually sat in VT-A and B, the very same Boeing 787, the same airframe that crashed in this terrible tragedy. And I asked him many questions about what it is like to fly an aircraft of this kind, what went through his mind when he heard about the tragedy, and how pilots actually train for the kind of devastating situations that they are often thrown into. This is the first time on television that a pilot who has flown the same aircraft that crashed in Ahmedabad yesterday is live on television. This is that conversation. Ever since the terrible aviation disaster involving Air India Flight 171 that was scheduled from Ahmedabad to Gatwick in London, you've heard from a variety of aviation experts. All of them have had credible views here on NDTV, but we place a very special emphasis on those who've been literally in the cockpit and those, especially pilots, who've actually faced emergencies of this kind. And now on NDTV, for the first time on television since the Flight 171 tragedy, we have someone who has not only flown the 787 aircraft, but actually flew 787 aircraft for Air India itself until as recently as last year. Captain Rakesh Rai is with us on this special broadcast. We've got a lot of questions and area to cover, but I want to emphasize this once again, that Captain Rakesh Rai, standing here on this broadcast, flew the exact kind of aircraft for the same airline until last year. And there couldn't be a better person to help us navigate the difficult unanswered questions of what happened to Flight 171. I'm going to start straight off with you, Captain Rai, with those two videos of the crash that have come out. These are the only two videos that have come out so far in public. You have flown the exact same kind of aircraft with the same airline, Air India. What did you make of these two videos? What do they tell you, sir?
Namaskar and Jai Hind. Basically, the video indicates that the takeoff was a very normal takeoff. Nothing unusual about the takeoff.
Nothing abnormal.
Nothing abnormal about the takeoff. His rate of rotation and the way he has climbed up is very normal. But something has gone wrong towards maybe an altitude of 400 to 500 feet, and the momentum has taken the aircraft to about 600.
At this point?
At this point,
yeah.
The most surprising aspect of this takeoff is that the undercarriage has not been retracted. What happens in a normal takeoff is that the moment you start rotating the aircraft for takeoff and the aircraft has left the ground, the instruments indicate a positive rate of climb.
Right.
So the co-pilot or the pilot monitoring gives a call, positive rate. The pilot flying cross-checks that there has been a positive rate, and he gives a call, gear up.
Yeah, for the landing gear to be retracted.
To be retracted.
Yeah.
That is for the purpose of performance of the aeroplane. All this happens within a height of, say, about 50 to 100 feet.
Right.
This procedure
literally seconds after liftoff.
Yes, this procedure is completed. But here what you see, the undercarriage has not been retracted at all.
Yeah. Much clearer in the first video.
Yeah. So that raises a lot of questions as to what could be the reason behind the undercarriage not being retracted.
What does it tell you? Specific.
You see, we can only speculate. The actual reason behind that will come out only in the DFDR.
Yes.
One could be that a bird hit has taken place. Both the pilots have been taken aback.
But that has apparently been ruled out, is what we're hearing. Yeah.
Okay. So, but I'm just giving you the reason. So, but a bird hit has happened. Both the pilots have been taken aback by what has happened. And in the process, they have forgotten to raise the undercarriage. The second thing could be that there has been a sudden loss of power and it has distracted everyone so much that in the process the gear has not been raised. And the third very unlikely scenario is that when the captain said gear up, the first officer or the co-pilot, instead of raising the gear, has retracted the flaps.
Flaps, yeah.
Retraction of flaps will result in immediate loss of lift.
Yes.
And with the gear down, the thrust will not be able to cope up with the drag being created. So the aircraft will not be able to climb. So these could be a few of the scenarios, but it will be very wrong on my part to say that, okay.
No, I understand. And I want to put out this disclaimer that Captain Rai is someone who has literally flown the 787 for Air India, but this is only in the realm of discussion. The truth will only come out after an investigation. And the black box has just been retrieved as well. So that investigation has begun. My second question to you, Captain Rai, is, sitting in the cockpit, and you know what it's like sitting in that 787 cockpit. If an error of this kind, theoretically, we are not saying any errors have been made, but if an error like, retracting the flaps instead of the landing gear happened, wouldn't the flight control computer or, the safety features on the aircraft disallow something like that because it is programmed to keep the aircraft in that lift-off configuration?
See, there is a flight protection available, but that is only in the cruise at high speeds for inadvertent deployment of flaps. But for retraction of flaps, there is no such thing. There are only gates.
That's very important.
There are only gates available. Say you are at flaps 5 and you want to go to flaps 1, flaps up, then at flaps 1 position, there is a gate. So the movement has to be a deliberate movement to cross that gate and go to flaps 1. That is the only protection provided.
Captain Rai, a lot of debate. People seem to diverge on whether this very grainy set of images from these two crash videos suggests that the flaps were retracted or extended. Are you able to tell from these pictures whether they are extended or retracted?
See, I personally went onto the YouTube and took a screenshot and zoomed it. It's not possible.
You can't tell.
You can't tell. No way.
So let's leave that aside for the moment. What can you tell us about the engines from these two videos? Because bird hit has been ruled out according to every expert we've spoken to about this. but there is obviously a catastrophic drop in thrust and lift, where the aircraft, instead of continuing to climb, the 787, which you have flown and you've been in this exact situation, suddenly levels out and then falls.
See, if
what
there is
could have
a loss,
happened to the engines?
If there is a loss of thrust, even partial loss of thrust, because of various reasons, could be a software glitch, could be a kind of a stall for some reason. This partial loss of thrust also can result into catastrophic situation because the gear is down. That's very important. The gear down is actually acting like a speed brake.
Right.
It's not allowing speed to build up. And if the speed is not building up, the lift is not there.
Yeah.
And if the lift is not there, aircraft will continue sinking.
In fact, I want to draw your attention to these two images.
Yeah.
This says retracted, but that doesn't appear to be the case. At least we cannot say so definitely. This is what a 787, which you have flown, looks like when the flaps are extended in a takeoff configuration.
Correct.
This is the ill-fated 787 of Air India that crashed in Ahmedabad. But you cannot tell here whether they are extended or retracted.
No way. It's so grainy.
It's too grainy.
Very difficult. And because of the attitude of the aeroplane, it's about 15 degrees nose up, you see more of the wing area. So it's difficult to ascertain whether the flaps are down or not. If the aircraft was in this attitude, you could make out that the flaps are down. But if it's a 15 degrees up attitude,
you can see the entire surface area of the wing.
You can see the plan form of the wing. So it's difficult to analyze whether the flaps are down or not.
Now I want to come to the engines themselves. Let's go back to the crash videos. People have been talking about how it's possible that one engine had failed, and this was flying on a single engine, and maybe the second engine was also erroneously shut down. But then you can hear the sounds of the engine, especially in that first video. What are your views on that? What are the engine protocols, sir?
See, if an engine fails, there are memory items to be carried out. And if there is a severe damage to the engine, one of the memory items is to shut down that engine. Fuel control switch cut off. That is one of the actions. There is a possibility that instead of switching off the dead engine, somebody switches off the live engine.
By mistake?
By mistake, it can happen. So then both engines have failed and the height is not sufficient to relight and go ahead. I'm not saying that is the scenario here, but that's a possibility.
No, but we trust your words because you've been in that seat.
That's a possibility that this can happen, that the wrong engine has been switched off. If the wrong engine has been switched off, there is no time available at that altitude to recover.
It's just too low.
It's just too low. There is no sufficient. Now, the first question, in the first scenario, when we talked about that the flaps have been retracted inadvertently, if the aeroplane had sufficient height, maybe 1,000 feet, the flaps can again be selected and air situation recovered.
So this was this then a case of simply not having enough time? Let us assume for a moment that some errors may have been made. We're not saying that definitively, but let us assume for a moment that some errors were made. Is it a question of the 787 pilots simply not having time to correct what may have happened or respond to the emergency?
See, the takeoff roll itself, with that kind of heavy weight and that kind of high temperature in Ahmedabad, would have taken about between 20 to 30 seconds. The whole crash has happened from the wheels roll up to 59 seconds. So if the aircraft gets airborne around 30 seconds, the pilot has precisely 25 seconds to react.
In fact, we counted the amount of time from the moment the aircraft lifts off till impact up to roughly 32 seconds, sir. So 32 seconds, half a minute.
So that's all. Half a minute is very less time to react. And that also, one has to keep in mind, it will take about 3 to 4 seconds for the pilot to understand what has happened. So that time also you need to reduce from that 25 seconds. So it becomes just about 20 seconds. In 20 seconds to react and recover the situation, extremely difficult. And one has to understand this. Speed was 170 knots, that's 320 kilometers per hour. Aircraft is moving fast for any ground transport thing. A lot of ground is being covered in that much of speed. So 20 seconds for anybody to react and recover the situation with gear down very difficult.
No, it is at the same time terrifying as well as, one is filled with admiration for pilots and, bless their souls, as we talk about, the departed and all of these people, including the brave crew of this aircraft. At what point in this, we're saying 825 feet because that's what came on some of the flight mapping software. But as you said, the altitude may have been far less, maybe about 300, 400, 500 feet.
625 feet.
625 feet. Okay, about 200 feet less than we're saying. At what point would that Mayday call have gone out, sir? At that time when the aircraft is sort of leveling out and starting to descend?
It could have been at the time when the pilot realized whatever wrong has happened. Whatever wrong has happened.
Yeah.
When the aircraft was unable to gain further height and it has started going down, that is the time the call must have been given. Because then the aircraft is out of control.
Yeah.
He is not able to control the aeroplane. So he has given a call, Mayday. But after that, for anybody to help him or for anybody else
Which is why they probably didn't respond when the air traffic control
Absolutely, because
called
he must
back.
have been busy handling the aeroplane.
Yeah.
He must have been busy handling the aeroplane. And you can see the attitude of the aeroplane increasing because it's a natural instinct when the ground is rushing towards you.
To pull away from it.
You pull away from it trying to save yourself. Some people have also said that he has seen the building, medical college building, and he has raised the attitude to avoid hitting that. I don't think he would have seen the building because the attitude is so high.
Yeah.
The building would have been under his nose.
Correct.
So there is no way he can see the building.
Away from his field of vision.
Away from his field of vision.
It's, 32 seconds is such a, it's less than a minute, it's half a minute, and one is hard pressed to understand how many decisions the pilots would have had to take in that very limited time.
Between me and you in 32 seconds, how much of discussion can we have?
Exactly.
No, the co-pilot is sitting this side, he is flying, handling the emergency and consulting the co-pilot what needs to be done. There's no time.
Yeah.
There's no time.
In your training, Captain Rai, 787 training, and right now as we talk about this aircraft, and we've got pictures of the aircraft itself before this terrible tragedy, which photographers around the world have taken pictures of that, the VT A and B. I wonder if you have maybe flown this aircraft.
I've flown this airplane.
You have flown this aircraft. Okay, let's put pictures of that aircraft on our screen. We've got images that have been captured in various air shows, in various airports around the country of this particular aircraft that you have flown yourself.
I've flown Dreamliner for 12 years.
And this particular airframe also you've flown?
Definitely.
You've flown this aircraft as well.
Definitely.
Okay. While we wait, there you have it. This is the aircraft, and you're saying there's definitely something that you have flown. And we've collated some of these images. So before I move to my next question, I just wanted to wonder how you felt when you heard about this. I mean, because we do understand that there is a man-machine connection. You do feel a connection to the aircraft that you fly.
Absolutely.
You're not flying the same aircraft every time, but you're actually telling us here on NDTV that you've flown this very aircraft.
I must have flown it many times.
Yeah.
See, this aeroplane is technologically the most advanced passenger aeroplane in the world.
Yeah.
It's very sophisticated. When you fly this aeroplane, even with 42 years of flying experience, I used to watch how the aeroplane does things. It was like magic.
Yeah.
It was like space-age technology. Beautiful aeroplane, amazing aeroplane to fly. And because of that, you start loving the aeroplane, the man-machine thing. And on top of that, Sumit Sabharwal is a very good friend.
Yeah.
I've flown with him many times. Very nice person, very soft-spoken, very down-to-earth person. Losing a close friend, losing a beautiful machine, and of course losing so many passengers is very heartbreaking.
In your training on 787s, Captain Rai, are you trained to respond and given a checklist of things you can do in such situations? Because from my understanding in pilot training, even the most extreme situations are catered for and trained for on simulators and things like that. Would something like this have figured in your training?
Absolutely. Let's first get on to the history of checklist.
Yeah.
The doctors in their operation theater, they also have a checklist. And their checklist is actually inspired by cockpit checklist. Not many people are aware of this. They have copied this, procedure from us.
Yeah. And just to be specific, we're talking about the actual crash, that kind of scenario. So we'll put that video back on the wall. Yeah.
Yeah. So in the simulator, at least twice a year, all of us are given emergencies, and simulator is like real life thing.
Yeah.
You know, if you can fly the simulator, it's called a 0-hour simulator. It means if you can fly the simulator, you can straight sit in the aeroplane and fly the aeroplane. It is so realistic. So in the simulator, you can simulate any kind of emergency, any kind of weather condition, anything. So we are made to practice different kinds of emergencies.
Including this kind of emergency?
Absolutely.
And what is the what is the standard operating procedure for something like this?
Like I told you, the gear down is the biggest thing in this whole crash. The gear was down, and that has most likely created most of the problem in the aeroplane. In the simulator, the standard operating procedure, like I said, positive rate gear up. And after that, everything happens. So in the simulator, we are given all kinds of emergencies, engine fire, engine failure, engine severe damage, and we take action accordingly. But training on 2 engines failing at the same time, I don't think it's being done, because that possibility is 1 in millions.
So this is rarest of the rare. We're talking about potentially.
Potentially. If both the engines are failed, it's one of the rarest of the rare.
Yeah.
The only parallel to this was Sully.
Yeah.
Yeah. When he landed in Hudson, both engines failed because of a bird hit. But both engines failing at the same time is a very rare thing. Previous to that was the British Airways 747 when entered into volcanic ash, when all 4 engines failed. So this is a very, very rare phenomena.
Yeah.
If it has happened.
Yeah. You know, Captain Rai, the Boeing 787 is not a very old aircraft. It was introduced in 2011. There are over 1,000 flying right now. Air India is one of the largest operators. As you described at the beginning, this is a high performance, beautiful, advanced aircraft.
Yep.
The pilots and crew were highly qualified. Very experienced, flying personnel in the cockpit as well. The public will be wondering, the flying public will be wondering, such a sophisticated aircraft, such an amazingly experienced crew, a series of things must have gone catastrophically wrong for something like this to happen, because aviation safety is built on redundancies. If one thing fails, there will always be another thing to back it up like a safety net. So for something like this to happen, it must have been a terrible, perfect storm of, perhaps cascading failures.
It's always a chain of events.
Yeah.
In any kind of accidents, it's always a chain of events. A lot of things happen, one after another. So, to say that air transportation is not safe is not correct.
Yeah.
There was a study, I was just reading about that a passenger, if he has to meet a fatal accident, he has to fly for 1,300,000 years continuously to meet with a fatal accident.
Yeah.
That's the probability. So if
and the probability is obviously exponentially higher for a road accident or something
much
like that.
higher.
Yeah.
Much higher. I mean, there's no comparison.
Yeah.
So if people get scared because of these kind of accidents that air travel is not safe, is absolutely wrong. Air travel is one of the safest mode of transportation. People don't need to worry about it. This is one of a kind. It's just a fluke kind of a thing. It's not to be taken into consideration. You can fly safe and you can fly happy. There is no problem.
Final 2 questions, Captain Rai, as we come to a close on this, because, I don't want to over-speculate also, because now we are waiting on the findings from that black box. The Tata Sons chairman has also talked about how they are committed to total transparency once they have an understanding of what may have happened. But how crucial is this phase right now? The crash site of where this happened has been mapped, the debris is being recovered. We have images of the tail where the Prime Minister also visited today, which apparently contained that black box, has been recovered. This is that picture as well. What happens next, if you can tell us just a little bit, as far as the investigation is concerned?
See, the flight data recorder will be decoded. Depending upon what they find in the flight data recorder at what stage, if in the earlier stage itself they find something which is incriminating evidence, then they will come to some conclusion, this is what has happened. Otherwise, it can take as long as 5 to 6 months to finally come to a conclusion what exactly has happened. So it depends. what kind of conversation the pilots have had. Based on that, they can find out what could have gone wrong. They can look at that part and see and come to a conclusion. So to say that it can the results can come out in 1 week or in 1 month or in 6 months is difficult.
Final question then. At this point of time, the 787, the aircraft, in these pictures, in this terrible accident, you've spent a portion of your career flying these amazing aircraft as well. There is a sense that there could be, depending on what the findings are, if they are very serious findings and are not just specific to this particular accident, which happens to be the first of the 787 type, then it could have a larger effect. There may be possible fleet groundings. It could have an international ramification as well. What is your hunch as a pilot? Do you think that's a possibility? Because it's important to emphasize this is the first accident of this aircraft since it was introduced in 2011.
See, I was a military pilot before this.
Yeah.
And even in the Air Force, if an accident took place, at times the whole fleet was grounded to carry out checks on each and every aeroplane. Similarly here, if any incident takes place, like the DGCA, that we just heard on the news that DGCA has come out with certain number of checks to be carried out. So those checks are mandatory checks to rule out certain possibilities. At the accident site, they may have noticed something because of which they want certain checks to be carried out. And if something concrete comes out, Boeing is, not averse to grounding the whole fleet and carry out all checks before the aeroplane gets airborne again.
Final question, Captain Rai, before I let you go, because this is valuable and it helps us really understand a view from the cockpit. We use that phrase loosely, but yours really is a view from the cockpit. So I will end by asking you this. We hear about flights, we hear about, aviation in general, largely when it is bad news, and I'm talking about in this context, accidents or collisions or a ground incident at an airport. There must be an entire world of emergencies in the air that are never reported. Where pilots are really earning their training and doing what they've been trained to do to get out of sticky situations, which never sort of make it to the news or to the public. Tell us about at least one of those. You don't need to go into specifics, but you must have.
That's a very good question you asked, and I was hoping that you asked this question. When an accident takes place, in this accident, the pilot has paid with his life. In other emergencies, when the pilot is found at fault, he is penalized straight away. But I'm yet to come across an incident where the pilot has handled the emergency very well and saved lives. There has been no reward or award.
Tell us about one of yours.
That's taken for granted that he is supposed to do that. So the company and the aviation authority want me to take this aeroplane from Delhi to London and tell me, dude, don't make a mistake. You make a mistake, we'll hang you. But they never say that you do a good job, we'll reward you.
Very true. I understand what you mean, and it is
fortunately, it's God's grace that I haven't landed up in any very serious situation. But I have lots of friends in Air India who have handled emergencies beautifully. Amazing handling of the situation. But the regulators haven't even come out with a letter of appreciation. This needs to be rectified.
And I know it does happen in the military, but it doesn't happen in civil aviation.
Absolutely.
As someone who covers defense myself, I hear you, and I know what you're talking about, and I hope
you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. I'm glad you know about it.
Hear about it. No, because on Republic Day, Independence Day, we do hear about heroism in aircraft that is decorated and recognized and felicitated by the president and the government.
Absolutely.
This is something perhaps that should happen to airline pilots as well.
It's a big morale booster.
And I hope that this conversation will be the beginning of that. Some kind of action maybe.
Hopefully.
And I promise you here on NDTV, we will take it to the government and see that something like this actually reflects.
Thank you so
Captain Rakesh Rai, has been an honor and a pleasure. Thank you for helping us navigate this incredible story. Flight 171's investigation is continuing. It has only just begun, and we will remain on the story and provide you with every single factual update. Thanks for watching. Air India plane crash in Ahmedabad, India's latest aviation disaster. India responds to the tragedy. Facts first, 100% ground reports.
Under this is the tail,
Here, and this is just one of the buildings that will give you an idea of the quantum of loss.
24 to 48 hours is the deadline that has been given for the DNA testing.
Maximum reporters, maximum coverage on NDTV.
गोल्ड प्लस ऑप्टिमिस्टिक रिफ्लेक्टिव ग्लास लगाओ, धूप की गर्मी को दूर भगाओ और बिजली का बिल भी बचाओ।
If it matters to you, if it matters to you, if it matters to you, it matters to India. It matters to India. And it matters to me. And it matters to me.
India Matters with Shivaru. Only on NDTV 24/7.
I've been reporting on all issues big and small from Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, rest of South India, bringing you all the action, all that you need to know, all that you want to know.
The energy of Maximum City is infectious. I'm bringing that energy in our news coverage from financial capital Mumbai.
Covering from the southernmost part of India over the last 23 years. I bring in-depth and 360.
Thank you very much for being on this special episode 7 of our defense podcast, Control Alt Defense. We're deviating ever so slightly into the country's biggest story right now, the Air India Flight 171 tragedy. There are many technological things to talk about, and as you know, if you've been watching this podcast, we do delve into those issues very deeply. But Vishnu and I today have decided to not do pure defense today, but we both felt, as people invested in issues of aviation, in issues of aircraft, as people who've tracked airlines and aviation for a very long time, we thought it was an important time to devote some attention to a complex issue, Vishnu. This is a serious and sad time
one as well. Yeah, it is.
And we obviously start this episode by, extending our deepest condolences to all of the families of the affected, both in the aircraft, on the ground, and across countries, really. And it's a sad time. And Vishnu, I know you've covered many of these air tragedies and disasters. I know for a fact that you covered the Charkhi Dadri disaster as well, many decades ago. Today we're talking about this, Vishnu, because at the time we are recording this episode, the black box of flight AI 171 has been retrieved from the tail section of the aircraft. Complex issue because that is going to be key to the analysis of why this aircraft crashed. There are those two, horrifying videos of the actual crash that took place. But let's start by, acknowledging that a crash investigation is a complicated, oftentimes a very meticulous and painstaking exercise. This time, hopefully things will happen a little sooner. But with the black box being recovered, let's first break down the components. What's inside the black box, Vishnu?
So the black box, firstly, is not black.
Yeah.
The black box is either pink or it's orangish in color, and there's a reason for that. It has to be reflective. It has to be something which investigators can actually see. It catches their eye. It's designed to do that amidst all the debris. Number one. So it's not a black box. It's anything but black. There are two components primarily of a black box. There is a DFDR, which is a digital flight data recorder, and then there is a cockpit voice recorder, or a CVR. These two components are located very close to each other, and in the case of the Boeing 787, they are located in the tail segment of the aircraft in an enclosed space which is hardened to ensure that the DFDR and the CVR, in other words, the black box, survives a crash.
Right.
That's the basis of it. And I can talk more if you like about it.
No, absolutely.
It's likely to be a Honeywell system in the 787, right? And these two systems, when they work together in modern aircraft, in simple terms, are almost plug and play.
Yeah.
This is solid state recording equipment, which it's essentially a sophisticated hard drive.
Yeah.
Separate ones, one for the audio conversations between the pilots.
Yeah.
That's
I'll
CVR,
come into the separate aspects
the
of
other
each
one
in
for
just
the
a
data.
moment. But
Yeah.
you've spoken about where these are situated.
Yeah.
And as we saw the tail section of the aircraft was completely destroyed.
Yes.
The tail section, one part of it near intact was, on the roof. And in fact, as we speak, we understand that those, squads on the roof are trying to shift that away from there for more forensic examination. Let's go one by one in those two components that you just named. The DFDR, which stands for Digital Flight Data Recorder. That is where all, criteria, measurements, performance of the aircraft, I'm assuming all of that on a second-by-second basis across the duration of this flight. And this flight lasted 32 seconds.
That's it,
Vishnu. From takeoff till impact was 32 seconds. So I'm assuming that 32 seconds of flight data will be in that recorder?
Much